What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 9PR Chapter 148, Kyoryu is on the list, releases Aizen, Soul Society panics, please subscribe. Invisible Empire. Nani, that guy used what kind of potion to defeat Benita? Masuko was immediately confused. If an ordinary body explodes, Benita can be resurrected. However, overgrowth causes one's own cells to overevolve and their functions cannot withstand the resulting death, which is simply unavoidable. Damn it, did you lose to technology in the end? Li Jembaluo frowned. Tien Fen felt unhappy. As the captain of the guards, he couldn't accept seeing his members die in this way. If possible, he would kill Kurotsuchi Mayuri with one shot. The most hateful thing is that Kurotsuchi Mayuri and Zaraki Kenpachi are still fine. After entering the protective bottle and receiving treatment, they can recover as before. Giselle's eyes almost rolled out of her eyes. Will it ultimately end in our failure? Robert stroked his eyes, a hint of unwillingness flashed in his eyes. After all, Benita's power far exceeded that of Kurotsuchi Mayuri and Zaraki Kenpachi, but in the end Benita was brutally killed. That is the left arm of the Spirit King. There is also the ability of holy writing given to him by Yuhabach. Defeat is simply too embarrassing. What does Kurotsuchi Mayuri mean by evolved? Bambietta was a little curious. Kurotsuchi Mayuri, who was lying in the protective bottle, protected Nirvana's brain in front of her, but nothing changed. How did the soul finally leave and start its self-evolution from scratch? Bambietta couldn't understand this. Is it because of this battle that Kurotsuchi Mayuri discovered his shortcomings, or was it because of Zale Aporo's reminder that he found his lost self? Lee Toto was also full of curiosity. Masuko shook his head. I don't know, but is it too much to say that Kurotsuchi Mayuri surpassed Urahara Kazuki? Urahara Kazuki is a person who was given special combat power by His Majesty. He can surpass him just by relying on these technologies? Look at Kurotsuchi Mayuri's proud look. It seems she has made some new discovery. Kuruji narrowed his eyes slightly. Since Benita has also failed, I can only rely on you, Lijibero. Benita hesitated, but Lijibero heard clearly. He vowed solemnly. Leave your revenge to me, Urahara store. Ahaha, Kurotsuchi Mayuri is still as arrogant as usual. Urahara Kazuki opened the fan and fanned gently. He can also make these inventions. If it were anyone else, it would be really difficult to deal with Benita. Kurotsuchi Mayuri was able to eke out a victory, but if it were Urahara Kazuki, he would definitely have more means to kill Benita. At the same time, he will not suffer injuries like Kurotsuchi Mayuri. The video continues to play. I've surpassed you, Urahara Kazuki. Kurotsuchi Mayuri said, with a very satisfied expression on her face. It's a pity that I can't imagine your unwilling expression, but it is precisely because of this that it is valuable to witness with your own eyes. Soaked in the liquid of the protective bottle, Kurotsuchi Mayuri spit out bubbles like a fish. When we meet next time, I will show you the gap between us. You and I. The gap between two people. The scene changed, and it looked like a vast ocean environment. Kurotsuchi Mayuri sank further into the depths. At this time, Niranemu, who was completely naked, waved to him like a rescuer. Hey, are you paying out benefits again? Kyōraku Shunsui coughed slightly outside the video, staring closely at Nirvana in the video. He has seen similar scenes many times. Kurosaki Masaki, Rukia, another Nirvana dream this time. I have to say, it's really addictive. Captain, can you close your eyes? Xiao Nanao complained when she saw Kyōraku Shunsui's careless look. Why should I shut up? I'm sighing. Captain Nirvana is going to surpass Urahara Kazuki's pace. Kyōraku Shunsui suddenly became serious. Kyoto bandleader has a good vision. Kurotsuchi Mayuri smiled immediately when she heard that she had surpassed Urahara Kazuki. At this time, a cute little girl wearing a Death Tyrant outfit and with her hair disheveled suddenly appeared on the screen. It looks very much like Nirvana in childhood. That's... Tōshirō outside the video frowned tightly and then continued. Is that Nemu? Or is it Mian? Mianba, who was recreated by Captain Nirvana. Number. He had never seen Mianimeng as a child before, but he recalled Xiaoyanmeng in the picture just now, and he felt that the girl's look and image were somewhat similar to Xiaoyanmeng. Kurotsuchi Mayuri was silent. He knew better than anyone else that it was not Nirvana, but the sleep number 8 created by the brain. That's not me. Nian Meng spoke first, looking depressed. Seeing that the atmosphere was a bit delicate, Kyōraku Shunsui spoke up and changed the topic. Is this little girl the same age as Abarai Berry Flower? Maybe they can play together. Rukia looked a little shy when she heard this. If so, she will definitely become good friends with Berry Blossom. The corner of Jashiro's mouth curved into a beautiful curve. What are these words? It should be that we, Shinigami, have placed our hopes on their generation. Hey, Jashiro, let's stay strong, okay? Kyōraku Shunsui said with a smile. At this point the screen also ends playing. Open black lens bracket Kurotsuchi Mayuri's Benita Pikaja. Win. Close black lens bracket. This is a big win. He single-handedly defeated a personal guard. This achievement is definitely enough to be included in the annals of history. Soon, Kurotsuchi Mayuri's name appeared on the gold list. As the gold list slowly closed, the next person's name was also announced. Number 16 on the combat power list, Kyōraku Shunsui. Name: Kyōraku Shunsui Faction. Seirei Identity: Shinigami. Abilities: Bankai XT, 95 Defense, 95 Speed, 95, 97. Number: 95 Kido, 95 Ryotsu, 96, 1,500,000 Seirei. Captain Kyōband, are you still on the list? You are still ranked in front of Captain Nirvana. Kashiwa Murasajan said in surprise. This was within his expectations, but it was also unexpected. Kyōraku Shunsui's name will definitely be on the list, no doubt about it. Even ranking 16 is already very high. It's not that Kashiwa Murasajan doesn't believe in Kyōraku Shunsui, it's just that everyone knows Kyōraku Shunsui's previous battle. Fighting against Arrancar's Blade Stark, he was even at a disadvantage. You must know that Stark is only ranked outside the 25th place. Logically speaking, even if Kyōraku Shunsui can be on the list, he will not be ranked too high. The result was directly ranked 16th. Of course, Kashiwa Murasajan has not seen Kyōraku Shunsui's Bankai, which is a very important factor. Kyōraku, you are ranked so high. That many places ahead of me? Jashiro looked at Kyōraku Shunsui with a teasing tone. Of all the Shinigami present, only Jashiro and Unohana Retsu know what Kyōraku Shunsui's Bankai is like. The others never got a chance to see Kyōraku Shunsui release Bankai. Jashiro naturally knows how terrifying Kyōraku Shunsui's Bankai is. 16th place is indeed quite high, even in front of Captain Nirvana. Kyōraku Shunsui lowered his hat and glanced at Kurotsuchi Mayuri from the corner of his eye. Shout, what's the big deal? The arrogant Kurotsuchi Mayuri sighed and continued. You are just one level above me. If Benita is left to you to deal with, you will never be able to win. Kyōraku Shunsui nodded solemnly. Captain Nirvana is right. I really don't want to encounter a troublesome opponent like Benita, and I have no way to deal with him. Kira praised. Only Captain Nirvana can deal with Benita. First team building. Only ranked 16th. Yamamoto Genryuzai frowned slightly. Obviously this ranking did not meet his expectations. No matter what, it has to be in the top 15. Even a person of Unohana Retsu's level is only ranked 18th. Kyōraku Shunsui's Zanpakuto's ability can be ranked in front of Unohana Retsu. He was not only surprised that he didn't make it into the top 15. Captain, aside from Benita's failure, this Quincy's ability is definitely among the top 15, along with Gerald and Yaskin who appeared before. Shojiro Sasaki named several names in succession. These people were all very capable and incredibly powerful. Yamamoto Genryuzai also thought about it carefully. There are still many strong men in front of them. The Blade Wang Yu and Monk from the Zero Division have not yet appeared, and there are still many Quincy who have not yet appeared. Kyōraku Shunsui is ranked 16th, which seems reasonable. Suya Palace. Damn it, why is it Uncle Shinigami? Lily Knight was a little depressed. Even Stark couldn't defeat him. How did he manage to be ranked 16th? What's more, when he was fighting with Stark, Jashiro also joined the battle. If Kyōraku Shunsui had fought alone, he would have been defeated long ago. You told me, he surpassed Stark by more than 10 places? Idiot, didn't you realize that Kyōraku Shunsui didn't use all his strength in the battle with us? Stark glanced at Lille Knight. Of course he himself didn't use all his power, but it's almost 80%. And Kyōraku Shunsui has been fighting with Shikai and has not used it at all. You must know that Bankai is Shinigami's most powerful killing move. Without Bankai, Shinigami's combat effectiveness is only about 50% of its full strength. Doing some math, Kyōraku Shunsui ranks so high, no problem at all. Stark noticed that he always had reservations about those battles that Kyōraku Shunsui didn't care about. Kyōraku Shunsui is the Shinigami wearing a flower gown, right? His combat power is average, not as good as mine. The ranking is controversial, I protest. Yami was a little unconvinced. It's definitely useless to protest. Look at that guy's attribute panel. Apache frowned. Needless to say, attack power means direct damage. With a value of 95, no matter who the opponent is, they're definitely capable of fighting. Katen Kyōkotsu is a Zanpakuto with a pair of swords. Needless to say, it's rarity. Shikai's various games have also made his attack and defense numbers top-notch. The intelligence is as high as 97. This is somewhat beyond everyone's imagination. 97 is considered the person with the highest intelligence score after taking stock. But this person is Kyōraku Shunsui, so there is no problem at all. Whether it's combat IQ or emotional intelligence in dealing with people, it would be difficult for Soul Society to find a second person. Needless to say, Ryotsu is one of the oldest generation captains. If these two attributes are too low, it is impossible to serve as captain for such a long time. The panel is indeed exaggerated. Stark, you are so lucky. If Kyōraku Shunsui had turned on Bankai at that time, you would have died long ago. Neutra glanced at Stark. Stark did not refute, and said calmly, it's really annoying. What's wrong with my opponent? They are all such strong people, Invisible Empire. I thought it was who it was, but it turned out to be Kyōraku Shunsui, that half-assed guy. Robert's eyes flashed with a bright light, and he looked very proud. The image of him defeating Kyōraku Shunsui is still vivid in his mind at this moment. The guy who was shot through the eye by himself and severely injured was actually ranked nearly 30 years higher than him. It was really ridiculous. Half-baked, ha ha ha. Masco laughed heartily. Robert, what you describe as half-baked is really accurate. This guy does look like a half-baked person. Ace Knot frowned. Don't underestimate the enemy. Since he can serve as the captain after the death of Yamamoto Genryuzai Shigekuni, it shows that he is strong enough. He knows better than anyone what the Shinigami are like. Byakuya Kuchiki, who was beaten by himself at the beginning, was completely crushed in the later stage. Rukia Kuchiki couldn't even defeat Arankar's Espada. In the end, she used Baishia to punish herself for being cowardly and in the form of a second god. Kyōraku Shunsui is absolutely ridiculously powerful. However, at this time, Kyōraku Shunsui's record appeared on the big screen. Open black lens bracket Kyōraku Shunsui Sato Yasutora, victory, close black lens bracket open black lens bracket Kyōraku Shunsui vs Coyote Stark, barely won, close black lens bracket. This world. Do you want to announce the battle with me? Sato twitched the corner of his mouth. He had just entered Seirei at that time, and it had not been long since he awakened his power. In Soul Society, where there are so many powerful people, he is not even a novice. The result of the battle with Kyōraku Shunsui, who was ranked 16th on the combat power list, was also announced. Ha ha ha, Sato, you are so miserable. Renji couldn't help laughing. Sato was calm and continued. I think Kyōraku Shunsui didn't even show 10% of his strength in that battle, and I was almost killed. Now it seems that, let alone once you become successful, you haven't even shown your true strength, right? Killing yourself is as easy as squeezing an ant to death. Sato is thankful that he is still alive. Although the battle with you is not a formal battle, it can still be regarded as a victory, and the record looks better. Ishida Uryu said while adjusting his glasses. Seirei. What the hell, why did I barely defeat Stark? Kyōraku Shunsui looked helpless. Although he didn't care, it still felt a little strange. Genryuzai, there's no problem. The battle between you and Stark was protracted and you couldn't enjoy the fun of the battle at all. In the end, it was because of the involvement of others that Shoshi attacked secretly. Tucker kills. Zaraki Kenpachi smiled contemptuously, obviously feeling that it was reasonable to barely defeat this result. It would be unreasonable if it showed big W and good money. Kyōraku Shunsui. Okay, it's a victory anyway, which is better than a defeat. Results are still being announced. Sure enough, the result Kyōraku Shunsui least wanted to see happened. Open black lens bracket Kyōraku Shunsui's Robert Ajutron, interrupted, judged to be a failure, close black lens bracket. Kyōraku Shunsui's Yuglin Hasward, interrupted. Kyōraku Shunsui was speechless. If it's interrupted, just interrupt it. Why is it judged as a failure? It would be fine if it was a direct failure. Kyōraku Shunsui also accepted it. After all, he was injured in the battle. Interruption means that the battle is interrupted, just like in the confrontation between him and Hasward. Hasward was recalled by Yuhabach. This is the interruption. In other words, Robert apparently defeated Kyōraku Shunsui, but the battle was not over. Ha ha ha, Genryuzai, your record is a bit ugly, but the battle was interrupted. If the fight is over, Robert will not be your opponent. Jashiro looked at Genryuzai with a naive smile. District. Of course, he also knows that the death of Yamamoto Genryuzai will have a great impact on Kyōraku Shunsui, but its strength is definitely not something that Robert can touch. Kyōraku Shunsui's mouth twitched. Thank you, Jashiro. However, at this time, the picture started to play. Hell, a place of darkness. Kyōraku Shunsui sat on the ground and used the key to open the seal. He said with a serious look, okay, this way, you can agree directly with your mouth without using Ryotsu. For an ordinary person, it would be difficult for an ordinary person to suddenly speak after his mouth has been blocked for 2 years. But for you, this kind of thing shouldn't happen, right? Maybe. Aizen's voice suddenly came. Immediately afterwards, Aizen, wrapped in a black leather belt, slowly moved towards Kyōraku Shunsui. Seeing this, Kyōraku Shunsui's eyes suddenly trembled in disbelief. He only unlocked the seal on his mouth. How did he unlock the other seals? Seirei. Everyone seemed to have the same idea, staring at Kyōraku Shunsui. Do you want to release the evil Aizen? Chapter 149, Aizen helps Soul Society? You watch trembles, please subscribe. Seeing that Kyōraku Shunsui wanted to release Aizen, they couldn't sit still. No one knows who Aizen is and what he wants to do. Attack the Soul Society and enter the Soul Palace. Who can guarantee that Aizen will not do this kind of thing again after he is released? Captain Kyōraku, isn't this too thoughtless? Sui Feng frowned and looked at Kyōraku Shunsui very depressedly. She was not unaware of Aizen's power. Many captains and Visor tried their best to kill Aizen, but he was replaced by Hinamori Momo. The real Aizen is a captain with one sword. Although Sui Feng knows that Kyōraku Shunsui will not lift all Aizen's seals, this is already a threat. Yeah, Captain Sui Feng, don't blame me in a hurry. Kyōraku Shunsui waved his hand, looking innocent. Since the person in the video intends to free Aizen, he definitely wants Aizen's help. Otherwise, he would never go to Wujian with the seal key. Are we weak enough to need the help of that guy Aizen? Zaraki Kenpachi frowned and glanced at the many Shinigami around him. If Aizen and Arankar who are currently in Hueco Mundo saw this, wouldn't it be a slap in the face to Soul Society? The Kyōraku leader in the video did this, which shows that he has difficulties. Sajin Kashiwamura said that he could understand Kyōraku Shunsui. It's like he had no choice but to go to the master to learn the humanization technique. If there is no other way, who would be willing to do that? Kyōraku Shunsui's expression became solemn. The fact that I want to seek help from Aizen shows that there are more difficult opponents than Quincy like Benita and Gerald. Although it has not yet been revealed why he lifted Aizen's seal in the video, it is easy to guess that he needs Aizen's powerful power. Yes, at that time the captain of the Kyo band was already the captain, and he had more things to consider than being the captain of the division. Tōshirō also nodded slightly. We all understand, Captain Kyo band, Hana Retsu also said. No, the seals on Aizen in the video are smaller? Kira focused on Aizen. According to the timeline, at this time, some of the seals on Aizen had been lifted by Mole City Shuangya. That includes the mouth. Of course Kyōraku Shunsui in the video doesn't know about this. So he directly unlocked the seal on Aizen's mouth, which made sense. But how can Aizen walk upright? You actually got rid of the seat. It's incredible. Omeda's pupils exploded. Could it be that Mole Chengshuang was recaptured after escaping from prison 453, and then continued to help Aizen remove the seal? It's possible. Shubing said smoothly. It is estimated that Mole City Shuangyi's power to touch Aizen's seal to this form is already at its limit. Fortunately, the seal that the leader of the Beijing band broke was the mouth, otherwise I would have asked that guy to break more seals, Tong Yin said angrily. Kyōraku Shunsui smiled. Who knew that I didn't realize this before? Suya Palace. Is Master Aizen going to be released? Zamari was immediately overjoyed. Although he didn't know who sealed Aizen, the prison term was definitely exaggerated. Unexpectedly, only 2 years later, Aizen would have the opportunity to make a comeback. It doesn't look like a release, but an attempt to use Lord Aizen's power to help Soul Society fight against the Quincy. Haribel frowned. But no one can guess what Aizen is thinking. Maybe he will give the same answer as Yuhabach when he met him. I refuse. The Shinigami are really disgusting. Even if they seal Lord Aizen, they still want to use his power. Do you really feel guilty if you do this? Zamari was very angry. He even wanted to help Aizen but refused. Don't worry, Zamari, didn't you see that Master Aizen has fewer seals on his body? With Hogyoku here, all the seals may become ineffective in a short time. Ruby smiled lightly. That's right. Don't talk about such a long sentence. Just 3 or 2 years. Aizen-sama can get rid of Wujian, right? Zamari became excited. Those weak Shinigami are just waiting to pray for Aizen-sama's power to help them. On the throne, Aizen showed a meaningful smile, crossed his legs and rested his chin on his hands, making him look very casual. Kyōraku Shunsui, what will you do if I refuse? Invisible Empire. Yuhabach sat upright slightly, with an imperceptible gloom on his face. Aizen Sosuke, I hope you won't disappoint me. In Shinigami in Soul Society, what Yuhabach fears most is not Yamamoto Genryuzai, but Aizen after fusion with Hogyoku. The Ryotsu he possesses can even compete with him. Without the ability to be omniscient and omnipotent, Habach even thought that he would be beaten by Aizen. Yuhabach wanted to get the result of refusing to join the Invisible Empire, but refusing to help Soul Society, he couldn't guarantee that Aizen would do that. This world. Looking at the posture, Aizen is going to help us deal with the Quincy and Yuhabach. Renji was very excited. He was looking forward to what would happen if Aizen faced those Quincy with strange and powerful abilities. Aizen was killed by a Quincy. Aizen has Hogyoku, which is not very realistic and can be resurrected even if it is killed. The Quincy was destroyed by the group. It's not very realistic. Yuhabach is the ancestor of the Quincy. What kind of omniscient and omnipotent ability does it have? It's okay to kill all the Quincy except Yuhabach, but it's impossible to kill Yuhabach. In any case, if Aizen joins the battle, it will definitely be an unprecedented battle. Is Aizen really trustworthy? Kurosaki Ichigo frowned tightly. What if you suddenly betray someone during a battle? No one can guess Aizen's thoughts. It's like he always knew the purpose of Ichimaru Jin staying by his side. What's the result? He didn't expose Ichimaru Jin, but wanted to see what method Ichimaru Jin would use to kill him. What can such a madman do? Renji also fell into deep thought, then raised his head and said, if the captain of the Kyo band has gone to negotiate with Aizen, it means that no matter whether Aizen is trustworthy or not, we have to try. Return to the video screen. Aizen walked up and down, making Kyōraku Shunsui doubt his life. Of the 3 seal keys in my hand, there are still 2 left, and I have no intention of continuing to use them. Aizen's mouth, nose, and left eye were all exposed to the air. Even if it was just one eye, his scrutinizing gaze had not changed at all. What's wrong? Aren't there still 2 keys available? Although Kyōraku Shunsui felt uncomfortable being questioned in such a condescending manner by Aizen, he still did not hesitate and inserted the 2 keys into the seal lock. Then, he showed a relaxed expression, spread his hands and said, "Now, all 3 keys have been used." Looking up, Kyōraku, who was wearing an eye patch, only had his left eye left, but compared to Aizen's judgmental gaze, his eyes were a little gloomy. "How do you feel about your left eye and ankle after liberation?" His mouth, left eye and ankle were already sealed. The 3 keys seem to have lifted the 3 seals, but they have not been unlocked. Kyōraku Shunsui's opening Shikai's mouth may have been unintentional, but his left eye and ankle were definitely intentional. "It's okay." Kyōraku Shunsui put him off, but Aizen smiled and was not angry. "Seirei. Ha ha ha, Captain Kyoko, you are so cunning." Omeda pouted and changed her words. "No, you are so smart." In order to prevent Aizen's seal from being released too much, a series of tricks were used. Captain Kyōband is being cautious. If 2 more seals are lifted, Aizen is likely to slowly lift all the seals. Kashiwamura Sajin explained. Yeah, Aizen is too dangerous, it's necessary to be more cautious." Kyōraku Shunsui waved his hand. The throne of Suya Palace. "Kyōraku Shunsui, you are still the same as before, as cunning as a loach." Aizen shook his head, and like in the video, he was not angry. It would be abnormal if Kyōraku Shunsui released the other 2 seals. He began to think about why the seal at his ankle was broken. Could it still be the credit of Mole City Xuangye? No. Lifting the eyes, ears and mouth is done in the form of Mole City double asking questions. For the rest of the seals, Mole Chengshuang had no reason to help him. Could it be Hogyoku's power? www. The video screen continues to play. Facing the lifeless Aizen, Kyōraku Shunsui stroked his bamboo hat lazily and said in a deep voice, "Are you complimenting me? Thank you very much." Suddenly, his eyes tightened, and he decisively stated the purpose of coming to BBC this time. "Do you want to get out of BBC?" "I don't remember saying that I hope you let me out." Aizen narrowed his eyes slightly. Would a person who doesn't want to get out of here say that there are still 2 keys that are not used? Kyōraku Shunsui raised his head. He likes to speculate on other people's words. Aizen doesn't want to go out. This is bullshit. Looking at a person who doesn't want to be released, would someone hide the key in his body? Aizen looked subtle, as if he had guessed what kind of medicine was sold in Kyōraku Shunsui's gourd. "Oh my god, have you seen through it?" Kyōraku Shunsui lifted up her flower coat and death tyrant outfit, and 2 cross cracks appeared at the heart. Actually, hiding the key to Wujian in the heart is the condition for entering Wujian and releasing your 3 constraints. The old guys in room 46 would not let Kyōraku Shunsui be so wanton. Even with this condition, they could only get 3 seals. "I see, if I kill you, the door to Wujian will be closed forever, right?" Aizen understood what Kyōraku Shunsui meant. "I will kill you to get Wujian, that's what they must think." Ran closed his eyes and shook his head. "Really, those old guys." Okay, this is all for Soul Society, isn't that great?" Kyōraku Shunsui stood up and became serious. "Then, let's get down to business." As he spoke, several subordinates dressed in white appeared and brought a chair. "Please sit down and lift this to the ground," Kyōraku Shunsui said politely. Look how polite the Kyōraku leader is. Seeing that Aizen was too tired from standing, he prepared a chair for him. Omeda outside the video looked at Kyōraku Shunsui and couldn't help laughing. It's obvious that Aizen's restraints have been lifted too much, and a restriction has been added. Kyōraku Shunsui waved his hand. "I'm very reasonable, aren't I?" In the picture, Aizen's expression froze when he saw the chair. "Do you think it's not enough for me to sit on the bench for 2 years? You finally got rid of the seal on your ankle, and you want to cuff me again? Would you like to breathe the air of Soul Society that you have been away from for a long time?" Kyōraku Shunsui was testing Aizen. But suddenly, the officer sent by room 46 said, "I'm sorry, I'm here." Before sitting down, restrain him again. As he spoke, he took out a leather strip. Kyōraku Shunsui was stunned. This is not a normal process. This is another price. He didn't expect the bailiff to do this at all. "Hey, don't do it without permission." Kyōraku Shunsui wanted to stop him, but before he could finish his words, there was a sharp sound, and the conductor's fingers were cut off by Reiatsu. The severed finger fell to the ground with a clatter. "How careless. This Bakudo harness cannot remove my Reiatsu, so don't even think about getting close to me," Aizen said solemnly. "If you touch me, you know what the consequences will be without me telling you, right?" Kyōraku Shunsui. "Do you think I'm going to experience Soul Society when I sit in that chair?" Kyōraku Shunsui's eyes were solemn. "I didn't ask you to contribute to Soul Society, but the interests between us should be relatively close." "You are really an interesting man." Aizen smiled. "Are you asking me if I want to breathe fresh air? The miserable corpse soul destroyed by Yuhabach. The air of the world. Seirei, can you cut off your arm just by relying on the Reiatsu around your body?" Tōshirō was dumbfounded for a moment. You must know that Aizen's body was still covered with seals at that time. There were only a few seals that were broken. Fortunately, the leader of the Kyoto band had a hand, otherwise Aizen would be really difficult to deal with. Kashiwamura Sajin frowned and complained again. The old guys in room 46 actually let the Kyoto band. He always hides the key to eternity in his heart. Quote. How despicable. Urine in room 46, isn't this a routine operation? Zaraki Kenpachi snorted coldly. He had never taken those old guys seriously, but he couldn't stand this kind of practice. Aizen does not want to help, but if Yuhabach destroys Soul Society, then Aizen will also be in dire straits. The stakes are the same for him and us. Kashiwamura Sajin doesn't think Aizen will stick it out to the end. Kyōraku Shunsui nodded. That guy will definitely give in. The scene at this time changed. The battle between Kurotsuchi Mayuri and Panita ended, and Urahara Kazuki and Kyōraku Shunsui on the other side instantly noticed something was wrong. Captain Nirvana. Kyōraku Shunsui asked. Urahara Kazuki Kaido. Yes, forget it. If it's that guy, he'll be fine. Yes, compared to this matter, the problem now is, you have to always pay attention to the movements of Reiatsu in the distance, because the number of Reiatsu around you has decreased a lot. Kyōraku Shunsui and Kazuki both believed in Kurotsuchi Mayuri and ignored him, instead focusing on the situation in front of them. Have the vice captains been defeated? Urahara Kazuki asked. Rukia and I haven't been defeated yet, as well as Hinamori. Renji answered. Kyōraku added. Nanao is here too. Hirako Shinji on the side frowned. Things are going to be difficult. We don't know which direction the enemy will attack from. If we slow down, we will play into the enemy's hands. In the distance, a dark-skinned man with short white hair was holding a huge black sniper rifle. This person is none other than the captain of Yuhabach's bodyguard, Lille Barro. The weapon's name is Tia Grant, the sniper rifle that can penetrate everything. You must be scared. Lille Barro was very proud. As a sniper, he enjoyed the feeling of the enemy panicking and running away. Fear is impossible not to exist. You must be aware of it. You don't know where the enemy will attack from, and your companions are gradually disappearing one after another under the sniper fire from a distance. No one would be afraid of this kind of thing. Then no matter what, after paying such a huge sacrifice, we still can't even figure out where the enemy is. From this point of view, if there is such a guy among that group of people, he is absolutely a stupid lunatic. Saraiti. That person is also a Quincy. Is the weapon a thermal weapon? Tōshirō frowned. He didn't know the identity of Rijabalo, but he could feel that this person was very strong. Don't underestimate the Quincy's thermal weapons. Robert's weapon is not only a pistol, but it was also penetrated by Captain Kyoban's eyes. Bei Liang said disapprovingly. Kyōraku Shunsui. Are you polite? Chapter 150, Cultural Differences. Yuhabach never taught me. Please subscribe. Don't worry, Captain Kyoban. Generally, the guys who use sniper rifles are old silver coins. They are not very powerful and can only do sneak attacks. Omaeda didn't think Lizabero was very powerful. He's just a long-distance attack guy. If it comes to melee combat, he'll be useless. Well, maybe. Kyōraku Shunsui nodded. Invisible Empire. Is it finally your turn to appear, Lichibero? A flash of light flashed in Gerald's eyes, seeming to have sentenced Kyōraku Shunsui and the others to death. Rijabalo's strength is definitely the top among many Quincy. Apart from Yuhabach and Hasward, he is the strongest Quincy. At this time, a smile appeared on Lee Jabaluo's lips, and he had already wanted to see himself on the stage. I didn't expect that my opponents would be Kyōraku Shunsui, who is ranked 16th, and Urahara Kazuki, who was given one of the special combat powers by His Majesty. Now it's interesting. Not only the two strong men, but also a captain of Hirako Shinji's level and a group of vice captains. Although there are many opponents, he can handle them alone. It feels good to be a sniper. Robert looked at Lille Barro with envy in his eyes. They are both hot weapons, but their own pistols are nothing in front of Tia Gulan of Rijabalo. Lee Jabaluo raised the corners of his mouth and smiled slightly. Yeah, isn't this feeling of sniping in the dark very wonderful? Watching your teammates fall to the ground one after another and not being able to find out where the enemy is, isn't it scary? When saying this, his eyes specifically turned to Asinot. Ace, who controls fear, knows this better than anyone else. If he uses this fear, he can definitely cause a lot of damage to the enemy. I am very sure of that. Asinot nodded. Being in the light and the enemy in the dark is a kind of fear. What's more, your gun is still aimed at them. If you are timid, you may be too frightened to move. Ha ha ha. This statement elicited roars of laughter. Panita, I will put aside your grudge for the time being. Wait until I kill that Kyōraku Shunsui and Urahara Kazuki who has more tricks than Kurotsuchi Mayuri, and then I will deal with Kurotsuchi Mayuri for you. Rijabaro looked at Panita and promised said. Panita nodded, her body hunched up. Return to the video screen. Kyōraku Shunsui, who was running, had already anticipated the situation he faced. Since you can't figure out the enemy's tactics, just prepare the plan for the next stage. He stopped and took Katen Kyōkotsu in his hands, as if preparing to attack. Idiot, I told you that if we stop, we will play into each other's hands. Hirako Shinji yelled at Kyōraku Shunsui. It's not necessarily safe to run. If you stop, wouldn't you be a target for the opponent? Suddenly, Kyōraku Shunsui's eyelids twitched, and then he rolled his eyes. Got you. Before he could launch an attack, a spirit bomb was shot towards him, hitting him in the chest. No matter how perfect the organizational structure is, as long as one person does something stupid, the entire group will collapse. Lee Jae-Luo chuckled in the distance. I have seen more than one or two such groups. I didn't think Shinigami would be so stupid, but... Before he finished speaking, Kyōraku Shunsui's lips began to tremble with blood streaming from the corners of his mouth. No. Polly man, he fell down. In an instant, Kyōraku Shunsui appeared behind Rijibaro and slashed with his sword. Where did this come from? Rijibaro outside the video couldn't understand why Kyōraku Shunsui, who was far away just now and was shot by him, suddenly appeared there, behind himself. Could it be that guy's Shikai ability? Kyōraku Shunsui's Shikai is to play games with his opponents. This ability was revealed to the public during his battle with Stark. However, the game shown by Kyōraku Shunsui at that time included a new ghost, the person standing higher one, and a shadow ghost, the one whose shadow was stepped on lost. There is also a naughty ghost, the person who cuts the color he said wins. What's going on with this roly-poly? Does it mean that the person who falls will fail? I didn't fall either. Lee Jae-Luo was very puzzled. What a strange ability. The rules of the game should have been formulated by the holder of Zanpakuto, Kyōraku Shunsui. The principle of this roly-poly is probably whoever falls first loses or wins. Asanote frowned. However, neither Kyōraku Shunsui nor Rijibaro fell down in the video. How can we judge this? No wonder he's ranked 16th. This guy's ability is too special. He doesn't understand the rules of the game at all. How can he fight? Gerald grinned, very angry. Even though Lightbaro is very capable, if he is pulled into the game, he must abide by the rules of the game, otherwise the losing party will definitely be harmed. When Kyōraku Shunsui used Shikai to fight, he also explained the ability to Stark. Although Stark discovered the Shikai himself, this, roly-poly, seems to be more complicated than all previous games. Yuhabach never taught them. Zai Palace. Let me tell you, when this guy fought me, he didn't use all his strength at all. Stark sighed. If Kyōraku Shunsui had used this strange tumbler at that time, and there were no explanations of the rules of the game, he would never have been able to figure out the principle. Stark, you can't think like this, you have to believe in yourself, and you can't let yourself continue to be a fool. Lillinite stamped her feet anxiously behind Stark. The same thing happened in the previous battle. After being attacked by Vizard's people, he just lay down on the ground and fell asleep. How could he defeat a powerful opponent with this kind of fighting attitude? Idiot, you are the salty fish. Stark roared at Lillinite, can you see the principle of this roly-poly move? Lillinette was speechless for a moment, then faltered. No. I don't know. Return to the video screen. The sudden Kyōraku Shunsui created a gust of wind behind Rijibaro. Rijibaro glanced back and then immediately dodged. Although the person was fine, the butt of the sniper rifle was cut off. You hid well. You moved very quickly, but I will keep your weapon away. Your life will be the next time. Kyōraku Shunsui said with cold eyes. Lee Jae-Luo stood there, showing no reaction on the surface, but he was very confused inside. He had no idea what had just happened. He had arrived here in an instant from such a long distance without even noticing it. How did he come around in an instant? This situation was beyond his knowledge. Kyōraku Shunsui was slightly surprised to see Rijibaro standing there in a daze, and asked, have you never played the game of falling over? What did you say you fell down? Lee Jae-Luo's eyes became wary. You really haven't played before. Kyōraku Shunsui touched the stubble on his chin and murmured, it seems that there are some cultural differences between the Quincy and us. Ignoring this, he suddenly glanced diagonally behind him, found a female figure and said, now you can keep up with my speed, Xiao Nanao, your skills have improved again. Kyōraku's teasing tone made Nanao feel that these words were not complimentary to her at all. I'm complimenting you, but this time it's more dangerous. You'd better return to everyone. I reject. Nanao's eyes were firm and she refused decisively. Seeing this, Kyōraku Shunsui changed his explanation. Then, go and tell everyone and let them take the first step. I understand. I will return immediately after conveying it. Nanao understood what Kyōraku Shunsui meant and no longer hesitated. Before leaving, she lowered her head and said, Captain, if you die before I come back, I will shave your body's chest hair. Hearing this, Kyōraku Shunsui broke out in cold sweat and said in a trembling voice, then I will become an unknown corpse, so let me go. Ha ha ha, Vice Captain Eyes is so cruel, he even thought about shaving the chest hair of the Kyo band leader. Omade outside the video couldn't help laughing. This conversation is absolutely hilarious. Kingraku, the hair on your chest is gone, so I can't recognize you. Jashiro scratched his head naively. Although that was Kyōraku's characteristic, it would be outrageous not to recognize you. Kyōraku Shunsui stroked the bamboo hat and said, yeah, let's not talk about it for now. Xiao Nanao, are you almost catching up with me? I really have to praise you. Eyes Nanao glanced at him. It's better not to give it up. The video screen continues to play. Hearing Kyōraku Shunsui's incoherent words, Nanao was speechless and left quickly. Oh my, I sound more and more like Lisa. Kyōraku Shunsui shook his head. Have you had enough trouble? Lee Jae-Baluo had been watching the farce between the two and felt speechless. How can there be such rogue people in the world? What you said is outrageous. Kyōraku Shunsui complained. He was talking to Xiao Nanao. What are you doing as a Quincy? We have in our hands all of you's battle information so far. Was your Zanpakuto's ability to turn a child's game into reality your game just now? Although Lille Barro did not have a childhood, his understanding was pretty good. As expected of someone who has stepped into the Soul King's palace, he even knows this, but the game I played with number 1 in person was not a roly-poly game. Kyōraku Shunsui explained. The rules of the game, tumbled down, are that the person who is the ghost is blindfolded, turns around while talking to you, and catches the person who is still moving. There are 3 rules in this game. 1. The ghost must remain within the sight of the participant. 2. If the participant is seen by the ghost in action, he or she will lose. 3. If the participant touches the ghost before being seen by the ghost, he or she will win. What the hell, it turns out to be a game of 123 wooden man. What do you call the tumbler falling over? Lee Jae-Baluo outside the video expressed helplessness. I thought the rules of the game were related to the game, but it was really a tumbler, but it turned out to be a wooden man. It seems that there are differences in culture between Shinigami and Quincy. Fortunately, Kyōraku Shunsui explained the rules of the game, otherwise who would have thought through this name that the game turned out to be 123 wooden man. Masco scratched his head. Please give me flowers. Even if I was hurt by this game during the battle and racked my brains to think of the rules of the game, it would be impossible to think of it. Lee Jae-Baluo in the video screen has already understood the rules of the game. So that's it, is it Dangdong's game? What, do you have a similar game? Kyōraku Shunsui was stunned for a moment. I spent a long time talking to you in vain. When you start this game, the attack of Reiatsu released by the ghost will be seen by the enemy, so if you touch it before being seen by the ghost, you can move the shortest distance on the track of the Reiatsu released by the ghost. Lee Jae-Baluo already understood why Kyōraku Shunsui teleported over and continued to dismantle. Where? During this period, the ghost will make you hallucinate that the other person has stopped. Is this the case? These rules are indeed very powerful for you. However, if the action is seen, it counts. That is to say, as long as the hallucination is detected and you are found, you can. He's dead. Hearing this, Kyōraku Shunsui became excited. It's amazing. I understood it very quickly and it helped me a lot. Help. Lee Jae-Baluo was dumbfounded again, because you told me the rules of the game, did you make a mistake? This game has no effect on me. Kyōraku Shunsui shook his head. That's not the case. It's a game only if each other knows the rules, right? There's one thing you need to correct about what you just said. The still posture you saw before. I am not an illusion. In fact, you did see me. Lee Jae-Baluo twitched the corner of his mouth and wondered whether his analysis for a long time was wrong. Bai is so happy. The feeling of sensing Reiatsu is called Reiatsu, or Reiatsu consciousness, but enemies fighting with Reiatsu will unconsciously use both vision and spiritual sense to see things. Kyōraku Shunsui's words touched upon Rijibaro's knowledge blind spots. 0. Therefore, the more the attention is focused on the battle, the more overwhelming the proportion of spiritual sense is than that of vision. In short, the eyes will no longer be used to see things unconsciously. At this time, Kyōraku Shunsui deliberately guided Ritsubaro to regard Reiatsu as himself, instantly deepening Rijibaro's spiritual awareness and placing it in front of him. Impossible. Lee Jae-Baluo was unconvinced. Can this alone allow me to make a misjudgment? Of course. Kyōraku Shunsui raised his chest and head high, staring at Lee Jae-Baluo with a scrutinizing gaze. Who do you think I am? I am the captain of Gote 13. Kyōraku Shunsui. Seraiti. The captain of the Kyo band is so handsome. The captain of Gote 13 must have this kind of courage. Shubei applauded vigorously. You can be more frivolous with your subordinates. It does not matter. But towards the enemy, you must have the momentum of a captain. Thank you, thank you. Kyōraku Shunsui was a little embarrassed and hurriedly said. This Quincy has some understanding, but not much. Kashiwamura Sajin chuckled. Captain Kyoband only used one of Shikai's games to fool him around. Jashiro frowned. You can't underestimate the opponent, this Quincy is more than that. Yeah, Jashiro is still very discerning. Kyōraku Shunsui looked at Jashiro with a smile and waved his hand. Although Lichibaro did not fully understand the rule of not losing money, he behaved very calmly. If it were anyone else, he would have panicked. Ordinary Quincy don't have such courage. Invisible Empire. The new captain of Gote 13, right? I want to see if you have the strength of Yamamoto Genryuzai. Rijibaro frowned. It's just a game of Shikai, why do you still want to kill him, the captain of the guards? Return to the video screen. Kyōraku Shunsui took advantage of the situation and counterattacked with Zibaro. The roly-poly fell. But suddenly, Rijibaro's sniper rifle pressed against Kyōraku Shunsui's chest. It's right here, I told you, this game doesn't work for me anymore. Bang! The violent gunshots were enough to burst eardrums. At the same time that the spirit bullet was fired at Kyōraku Shunsui, Rijibaro noticed a shadow appearing behind him. A black Katen Kyokotsu protrudes from the shadow. Shadow Ghost. After sensing something was wrong, Lijibaro jumped up instantly and fired a shot at the shadow. Fortunately, Kyōraku Shunsui appeared from the shadows just in time. I really didn't expect that I could dodge the attack of my Shadow Ghost. This is the first time I've encountered it. Kyōraku Shunsui became excited again. The opponent was very strong, and he also began to experience the fun of fighting. I've also said this, we have in our hands the intelligence of your battles so far, and Li Jiebaluo looked solemnly. You don't have any intelligence from us. At this time, blood was dripping from the wound where Kyōraku Shunsui was shot by a bullet. He said solemnly. I thought I was avoiding it. I told you my rules, but you didn't tell me yours. Isn't this unfair? It doesn't matter whether it's fair or not, Rijibaro decided to tell Kyōraku Shunsui his identity. Actually, Knights of the Star Cross X things penetrating, Lille Barro, my ability is to penetrate everything. Kyōraku Shunsui outside the video twitched his lips, through everything. Did I meet the strongest Quincy? Chapter 151, A Man Close to God, Yuhabach's highest masterpiece. Listening to the name of this holy text, I feel that he is a very powerful Quincy. Penetrating all things, could it be using the sniper rifle in Li Jiebaluo's hand? Kyōraku Shunsui was a little surprised. He had cut off the butt of the sniper rifle using the tumbler game just now, but it did not seem to affect the normal use of the sniper rifle. However, the spirit bullet fired from the sniper rifle also hit Kyōraku Shunsui, but the damage was not as great as expected. Looking at this guy's outfit, he does look like a big shot, but he can't make waves with just a sniper rifle. Sajin Kashiwamura looked disdainful. According to Kyōraku Shunsui's strength, it would not be a problem to deal with such an opponent. Kyōraku Shunsui disagreed with Kashiwamura Sajin this time and frowned. It's not that simple. This guy is very strong and difficult to deal with. Invisible Empire. Have you started attacking with Shadow Ghost again? It seems that Li Jia has seen through it. Bumby grinned. She had long wanted to see what the battle between Li Jia and Barro would be like. Now I finally got my wish. Don't worry. No matter how many games this guy has in Zanpakuto, it won't have any impact on me. Li Jiebaluo promised with a firm look. If you can't solve Kyōraku Shunsui without using Bankai, what qualifications do you have to be the captain of the guards? Your opponents may not only be Kyōraku Shunsui, Urahara Kazuki and the others, they will not do anything. If they come together, you will really be in danger. Gerald looked at Lille Barro with a flash of worry in his eyes. Hirako Shinji, Aizen Nanao and others are not only heartbroken, but the most terrifying Urahara Kazuki. If that guy joins the battlefield, Lille Barro's fate will probably be worse than Panita's battle against Kurotsuchi Mayuri. Of course Lille Barro is stronger in terms of hard power, but who knows what means his opponent will use. It's just a group of ants. Whether it's Kyōraku Shunsui or Urahara Kazuki, I don't pay attention at all. And that person named Aizen Nanao didn't. 310. Tell those people and let them leave. It was really the right thing to do. Li Jiebaluo smiled contemptuously, but if there was only one opponent, it would be much easier for him. Return to the video screen. While introducing himself, Lijibaro continued. The concept of escape that you think does not exist at all. Did you see the shadow? Kyōraku Shunsui asked Kaido after a brief moment of consternation. However, at this time, Lille Barro looked at the unharmed Kyōraku Shunsui in front of him with some surprise and confusion. Your confused expression seems to be asking me how I escaped. Don't worry, as you said, I did not escape, but what you attacked was just my afterimage. Kyōraku Shunsui chuckled. This is called shadow sending. When a shadow is stared at, its afterimage is mapped to other places. With your powerful spiritual sense, the afterimage left behind will also be very powerful. The scary thing about children's games is that it is impossible to predict when and what kind of game will start. And Kyōraku Shunsui takes advantage of this. No matter how uninterested you are, once your hand is grabbed, there is no way you can stop it and you can only get involved until you die. Kyōraku Shunsui looked at Li Jiebaluo with disdain. Your hand has been held, why not let's play together until death? Rijibaro remained silent, just frowning and staring at Kyōraku Shunsui. I thought to myself, this guy is really a lunatic. On the other side, Hirako had already heard the news from Nanao, and said with a slumped face, okay, let him go. After saying that, he turned around and left. No hesitation at all. Yes, let's go and help the leader of the Kyōband. Hinamori clenched his fists in excitement, but found that Hirako had already left. She quickly yelled at Hirako. Please wait a moment, Captain, are we really not going to support Captain Kyōband? Why do you have to go? The situation is very urgent, isn't it? Hirako stopped and looked at the female tank Hinamori, then let me ask everyone. Nanao, what do you think? Nanao was very decisive. I want to go back, please take the first step. She couldn't leave Kyōraku Shunsui alone. That's it. Then let me ask you again, what would Jashiro say if he were here? Hearing this, Rukia and the other vice captains fell silent twice. They had already imagined in their minds that Tōshirō would say, "Since Kyōraku said so, don't worry, just leave it to him." Hirako continued, "This is the correct answer. If you understand it, let's go." After taking just 2 steps, he paused on the spot and said loudly, "By the way, if old man Yuanlujai was still alive, he would also say the same thing and leave first. Fighting with the lives of the team members on their backs, this is exactly the duty of the captain." Visored. Kyōraku Shunsui was already the commander-in-chief at that time. When he said he wanted to retreat, those Shinigami still didn't know what to do. If it weren't for Shinji, they would all have died. Hiyori was a little unhappy, folded her hands on her chest, and said with a slightly complaining tone. Her prejudice against Shinigami has not been eliminated yet. At this time, a calm person needs to appear, and that person is me. Hirako bared his teeth and showed an indifferent look. "Idiot, you shouldn't care about those Shinigami and let them fend for themselves," Hiyori said again. Hirako pursed his lips and said nothing more. He had returned to Soul Society at that time and served as the captain of the 5th Division. He must have protected Soul Society, but the vice captain was Hinamori Momo, which made him feel a little uncomfortable. Seraiti. Hirako's approach was correct in this situation. "Don't forget, at that time, I was the captain." Kyōraku Shunsui stroked his hat and said seriously. However, his past inconsistency made his image not so formal in people's minds. "Captain Kyōraku, can you do it without our help?" Hinamori Momo looked at Kyōraku Shunsui with some worry. Although her usual behavior is not pleasing to the eye, she is kind-hearted at heart. It would definitely be uneasy to leave Kyōraku Shunsui there alone. "Of course, if you don't leave, I may have more concerns." Kyōraku Shunsui looked at Hinamori Momo and said seriously. Rijibalo's attack was from a long range, and there was no telling when a black gun would be fired. The deputy captains could not withstand Rijibalo's blow. "The captain will let us leave in normal battles, so don't worry about Kyōraku, we need to trust him." Jashiro turned to look at Kyōraku Shunsui and smiled. Kyōraku Shunsui looked at each other and smiled. This is the responsibility of the captain, and also his responsibility. Kyōraku Shunsui. Return to the video screen. Rijibalo has his gun trained on Kyōraku Shunsui. "You really made a mistake. At such a close distance, your sword should be able to kill me. Don't you think so?" he mocked. "I thought so too, that's why I struck that blow, right?" Kyōraku Shunsui took his time. But suddenly, Lee Jae-Luo's tiger body shook, and the barrel of the sniper rifle suddenly fell to the ground. In fact, Kyōraku Shunsui originally planned to cut off the entire arm, but the distance was not enough. After a brief shock, Lichibaro quickly distanced himself. He pulled the gun out, and a brand new barrel came out again. Kyōraku Shunsui frowned when he saw this. "I was surprised that the severed sniper rifle still had a form. Although my weapon looks like a gun, it is actually my bow and arrow, which I made with spirit seeds." Lille Barro explained. "I see." Kyōraku Shunsui nodded, "So even if the gun body is broken, you can continue to fight. If it is damaged, it can be rebuilt. Is this what you mean? But, you seem to have forgotten the rules of this game." Saying that, Kyōraku Shunsui had already teleported behind Rijibalo and slashed him hard with his sword, but the latter ducked to avoid it. Once Kyōraku Shunsui leaves Kyōraku Shunsui's sight, even for a moment, or only sees a little shadow, it will be his shadow that will be reflected in Ritsubaro's eyes. Lee Jae-Luo was forced to remember that when he was a child, he would feel extremely frightened by the shadow that followed him wherever he went. The next moment, countless Kyōraku Shunsui's shadow clone appeared in the sky, but the real body appeared behind Rijibaro. Kai. The smallpox mad bone pierced Lee Jibaro's chest from behind. "Seraiti. Is it over? It's much faster than I thought." Kashiwamura Sajin was shocked, unable to believe that the Quincy was so easily eliminated by Kyōraku Shunsui. Could it be that Kyōraku Shunsui's strength has greatly improved after becoming the captain? It shouldn't be enough to kill him. Kyōraku Shunsui discovered some details. At the beginning of the battle, Lee Jae-Luo's left eye, with a mark similar to a crosshair printed on the edge of the eye socket, never opened. If the eyes are blind, they should be covered with eye patches, but if they are always closed, it is difficult not to give people unlimited reverie. Some Quincy have very tenacious vitality, such as Panita and Gerald. I don't think Quincy, who can be the opponent of Captain Kyo, will die so easily. Kira frowned, and was quick and agile. The clothes Barrow wore were of a higher quality than ordinary Quincy's. Do you dare to say that this is not a powerful Quincy? It's better to be cautious. Jashiro sighed. Invisible Empire. That boy's game is really troublesome. He actually penetrated my body with Zanpakuto. The corners of Lee Jae-Luo's calm mouth suddenly drew a strange arc. It's quite ridiculous to say that I have the power to penetrate all things, but I am penetrated by Zanpakuto. But that's not a problem at all for you. Gerard was not worried about Lightbarrow's condition at all, but was worried about Kyōraku Shunsui. The current Lee Jae-Luo has not shown its true strength at all. The video screen continues to play. Zanpakuto pierced Rijibaro's body. He slowly opened his closed left eye. Ah, this is really not good. This is the third time I have opened my eyes. After I opened my two eyes, only then will the true essence that runs through all things be revealed. Now his gun has penetrated Kyōraku Shunsui's body, and his body has also been penetrated by Kyōraku Shunsui's Zanpakuto. The conditions of the two are almost the same, but the results are very different. I see, when you open your eyes, my theory won't work for you. Kyōraku Shunsui noticed this situation. That's right, at this moment, in this world, no weapon can kill me. Lee Jae-Luo said in a deep voice. Only in the very short moment of crisis during the battle, he was allowed to open his two eyes. It would be so unfair to the sinner if he kept his eyes open all the time. Oh, is it so? Kyōraku Shunsui pouted, please close your eyes quickly. He didn't know if Lille Barro was bragging or if he really had this ability. However, when I open my eyes 3 times in a battle, I will be allowed to continue fighting with my eyes open in subsequent battles. It is the Quincy that His Majesty finally bestowed power on, and it is His Majesty's highest masterpiece. He is also the person closest to God. Rijaballo raised his calm head and continued. For me like this, something that can make me open my eyes 3 times is absolutely not allowed to happen. Rijaballo suddenly opened his left eye, and his white pupils instantly emitted an extremely dazzling white light. At the same time, the mark around the left eye also flashed with light, spreading into a star-cross mark and shining across the earth. Complete holy body. God's sanction. After the transformation, Lee Jabarro's head was completely wrapped in a collar, a pair of vertical yellow stripes appeared on his face, a huge halo floated above his head, and his body seemed to be covered by a chrysalis. The arms are replaced by 8 hole-shaped white wings extending from the back. Seen from a distance, Lijaballo, who has entered the Holy Eucharist, looks like an archangel. Saraiti. This looks like an angel. Sui Feng swallowed. He is not praising the Quincy, but the halo above Rijaballo's head and the 8-sided wings behind his back really look like an angel descending from heaven. Is it Yuhabach's highest masterpiece? Entering the holy body seems to be somewhat different from other Quincy. Tōshirō frowned tightly. Just when Lee Jae-Luo explained his abilities, the moment he opened his eyes and was in an invincible state, he felt his scalp numb. If he could keep his eyes open, wouldn't Rijaballo have mastered the power of God? It doesn't seem to be easy to deal with. Captain Kyōband, I did underestimate this guy before. Sajin Kashiwamura was a little surprised, the last Quincy given the ability by Yuhabach. Logically speaking, the one with the strongest ability besides Yuhabach. Quote. Saving the good stuff for last is a concept everyone agrees on. And that power that is close to God, judging from this posture, is very likely to be real. Yeah, we really encountered a tough situation. Kyōraku Shunsui shook his head with a wry smile, looked at Jashiro and complained. Jashiro, if you are not here, it will be difficult for me to deal with him alone. Quote. Jashiro scratched his head and smiled. If I were here, it would be difficult for the two of us to deal with him. According to this guy's description of his abilities, it seems that you can't defeat him without using Bankai. I don't want to be around you who uses Bankai. Kyōraku Shunsui shook his head and sighed. I didn't expect that I could use Stark's words, why is the guy the first met so strong? But as the commander-in-chief, even if he died in battle, he would still tear off the arms and legs of Jaballo. Invisible Empire. 5.1 Liji, you didn't hold your breath and entered the holy body directly. Gerald was a little surprised because he could still play with Kyōraku Shunsui for a while longer. The opponent has a lot of games, so that their Quincy can see interesting things. There is no need to use that body to fight Kyōraku Shunsui, and I don't want to waste time. Rijaballo said seriously. Although he has entered the perfect holy body, it is only the initial form of the perfect holy body. If Kyōraku Shunsui cannot defeat himself at this stage, then he is not worthy of being his opponent. Okay, hurry up and kill that stinky Shinigami uncle. I'm annoyed when I see his face. Bambietta frowned. She had a bad impression of Kyōraku Shunsui, especially his frivolous look. The strength. Kill him. Panita also hesitated. The throne of Zai Palace. The power to be close to God. Aizen held his chin with a faint smile on his face. He didn't expect the Quincy to be such a strong guy. If he was invincible at certain moments with his eyes open, he really wanted to learn about Lee Jae-Luo's ability. Exclamation mark. Kyōraku Shunsui, the opponent you encountered this time is not easy. How should you deal with it? Or, can we see your Bankai? Seeing Rijaballo entering the holy body, Kyōraku Shunsui prepared to continue fighting, but found that his body could not move. Vicious bullet penetrates. The 3 holes in Rijabarro's wings flashed with golden light, and then 3 beams shot out from them, hitting Kyōraku Shunsui's chest. Although Kyōraku Shunsui was injured, he did not stop at all. He quickly jumped and hid behind a building. He often breathed a sigh of relief. But speaking of it, with such a... It's really not easy for me to be able to run so far despite being seriously injured. Good guy. I almost died, but in the end, I praised myself unreservedly. Most people really can't do that. Chapter 152, Katen Kyōkotsu in the heart of Kuromatsu, the 3 realms tremble. Kyōraku Shunsui was leaning against the wall, his right shoulder was shot through by a bullet, and a semicircular flesh pit was dented. Blood flowed down the wound, and his pink coat was stained blood red. To be honest, it would be a relief if I could die on the spot. Most people might die on the spot, but now I can't even pass out. It's really troubling. He sighed. Nanao isn't here, and I don't even have anyone to complain about when I say something like this. Seraiti. Has the captain of Kyoban given up on himself? A sinister smile appeared on Kurotsuchi Mayuri's lips. When the captain sees you like this, I'm afraid your punishment will be inevitable. Oh my, it's not that I don't want to fight, didn't you see, Captain Nirvana? Kyōraku Shunsui shook his head and smiled bitterly. Rijibalo entered the complete holy body form, and I couldn't even move, if it weren't for the fact that I recovered after being hit. What you see now is my body. Let alone no one to complain, there is no chance to complain at all. It can be seen that in terms of ability, Captain Beijing Band is indeed inferior to Lille Barro. If you can guarantee your life and escape, it will be no problem, Captain Capital Band. Hinamori Momo stared at Kyōraku Shunsui and begged. At the time in the video, Yamamoto Genryuzai had just passed away, and Kyōraku Shunsui had just succeeded as captain. Hinamori was worried that if he died, who would be the next captain? Omaeda laughed naively. Hinamori, you don't have to worry about the Kyōband leader. If he senses something is wrong, he will probably take appropriate measures. Sui Feng glared at Omaeda fiercely. Idiot, the captain of the Beijing band at that time was already the captain. How can it be compared with now? It's impossible for him to escape. Hearing this, Kyōraku Shunsui twitched his lips and said jokingly, Captain Sui Feng, you didn't leave any way for me to escape. Return to the video screen. Boom boom boom. Several more huge spirit beams were fired at them. The situation was very dangerous, but Kyōraku Shunsui dodged it. He took the opportunity to come to the building complex and hid in a room. He was so seriously injured, but he escaped quite quickly. Lille Barro was very surprised as to why the other party had such strong resilience. But, do you think you can escape? His eyes darkened and he stared at Kyōraku Shunsui inside the door from a distance. After seeing Rijibalo through the gate, Kyōraku Shunsui immediately pulled out the smallpox bone and took into account both offense and defense. Didn't you hear what I said clearly? No weapon can kill me. Lizabaro, who was huddled in a chrysalis-like body, looked very happy, somewhat similar to Espada's Zamari. Of course I know. Kyōraku Shunsui did not stop and continued to swing the smallpox mad bone, but the Kido blade may be able to hurt you. Hado's 78 Zan Huilin. A ring-shaped nimbus blade was shot out from Kyōraku Shunsui's side like a cutting machine, drawing an arc in midair before detonating. A violent explosion occurred on the roof of the building, but Rijibaro remained intact. What? Hado's 78 direct hits didn't cause any damage to Rijibaro. Outside the video, Rangaku's beautiful eyes were shaking. What kind of body is this that can withstand this blow and remain intact? Is it really the power of God? The power of Kido is also closely related to the user's Reiatsu. Captain Kyoban's Hado is very powerful. There is no doubt about this. However, even the 78th level Zanwaran cannot cause damage to Kidobaro. Trauma. Shu Bing frowned tightly. This opponent was far more terrifying than Penny. What a headache. What a troublesome opponent. Kyōraku Shunsui shook his head helplessly. When encountering such an opponent, it cannot be said that he is unlucky. He can only say that his strength is too weak. If he had the power of Yamamoto Genryuzai, he wouldn't be troubled. First team building. Yamamoto Genryuzai's deep eyes were full of worry for Kyōraku Shunsui. Jashiro was killed because of the Soul King, which was regarded as a sacrifice of life to maintain the stability of the three realms. If all the power of the Soul King's right arm was separated from his body, he would definitely die. And Unohana Retsu also died while teaching Zaraki Kenpachi Kendo. If Kyōraku Shunsui died in the hands of Rijibaro again, then he really didn't know who could inherit the position of captain. The three senior captains with high qualifications are all miserable. Even if Unohana Retsu is not dead, she will not be able to inherit the position of captain. The remaining captains, Kurotsuchi Mayuri and Zaraki Kenpachi, have extremely extreme and impossible personalities, and the remaining few are too young. Hey, Kyōraku, you better come back alive. Yamamoto sighed. Return to the video screen. As the explosion calmed down, Kyōraku Shunsui leaned against the wall again, looking up at Rijibaro in the distance. Oh, I also know that Kido is unlikely to cause harm to you, but he was unscathed. In this case, everything should be over. Not everything is bad though. Kyōraku Shunsui has already fled to the place where he first came to the Spirit King's palace, and the rest of the people should also be far away. Nanao, I'm sorry if I still involve you. He doesn't know about others, but Nanao will definitely rush to his side. This is Kyōraku Shunsui's understanding of Nanao over the years. He held on to his smallpox bones and managed to sit up. Then, let's move on to the next step where everything is over. Kyōraku Shunsui closed his eyes slightly. Bankai, Katen Kyōkotsu Heart of Black Pine. As hazy as mist, a female shadow made of an unknown substance appears behind Kyōraku Shunsui, which looks very strange. The double knives inserted into the ground extended out several black pine trees and pine leaves, and the surrounding area seemed to be covered with a layer of black gauze, making it dark and gloomy. On the other side of the real-world city, Yasuke is confronting Kurosaki Ichigo. Suddenly, Yasuke and Kurosaki Ichigo shook their bodies almost in unison, their faces full of shock. What's going on? The sky suddenly turns dark, and the temperature is about to drop. The Shiba Rock Eagle watching the battle in the distance frowned tightly, unable to understand. Sato on the side stretched out his hand, feeling the change, and immediately his face darkened. No. The temperature has not dropped, and the sky has not turned black. This is cold. Orihime was shivering from the cold, obviously. I didn't see or hear anything, but I couldn't suppress this chilling feeling. Ichigo looked up at the sky, sweating profusely. Is this Mr. Kyoryaku's Reiatsu? Then, is that the Bankai of Captain Kyōband? Tōshirō felt incredible outside the video. Even outside the video, he could feel the sky darkening. Although he couldn't experience the change in temperature, it turned out to be not a change in the weather, but the cold air released by Kyoraku Shunsui using Bankai. No wonder during the previous battle between Kyoraku Shunsui and Stark, Jashiro said that Kyoraku Shunsui's Bankai would have an impact on the people around him. Now it seems that what Jashiro said is absolutely correct. No wonder Kyoraku Captain went to the place where he first entered Soul King's palace just to keep a distance from the others. Hinamori Momo understood Kyoraku Shunsui's intention. Even Shinigami far away can feel the chill in the hearts of Katen Kyokotsu's black pine trees. If they are near Bankai, the impact will definitely penetrate deep into their bones. Katen Kyokotsu black pine heart. No wonder the lines on the ground are pine trees and pine leaves. Although I still don't know what Bankai's ability is, Captain Kyoko finally has the strength to fight. Kashiwamura Sajin's face changed. Looks good. Finally there is a glimmer of hope. Kyoraku Shunsui frowned. Even if he uses Bankai, he must not be careless. Zai Palace. Throne. As expected of the Kyōband leader. Aizen looked at Katen Kyokotsu in the video with wide eyes. Such a weird Bankai release process is really rare. Why did the female-like phantom behind Kyoraku Shunsui disappear before she appeared? What are Bankai's abilities? Aizen's mouth curved into a beautiful curve, full of expectation. Invisible Empire. It's a bit interesting. Lee Jae-Baluo's eyes were full of expectation. If Kyoraku Shunsui had maintained his original level, he would really think this was a boring battle. People with stronger strength will subconsciously want to fight with stronger people. Can just releasing Bankai have such a large-scale impact? It really surprised me. Bambietta changed his previous view of Kyoraku Shunsui, and even hoped to see him defeat Lee Jae-Baluo. Moves. Lille, you can't be defeated by this kid. Gerald glanced at Lille Barro. Although he believed in Lille Barro's strength, Panita could lose to Kurotsuchi Mayuri, which shows that there is no certainty. Things. It is also possible for Lee Jae-Baluo to be defeated. HMPH, Gerald, are you worried too much? Light Barro was very unhappy. Even if he lost this posture, he still had his split and final form, so there was no need to worry at all. Return to the video screen. Lee Jae-Baluo also noticed something was wrong. He stared around, frowned and murmured, is it an illusion? The sky seems to be getting darker. However, at this time, Kyoraku Shunsui in the distance was already walking towards him. Kyoraku Shunsui's Bankai ended, the twin swords did not change, and the extremely cold air was suspended behind him. Are you finally willing to take the initiative to come out? Rijibaro looked at Kyoraku Shunsui with a hint of ridicule. Sorry to keep you waiting. Kyoraku Shunsui first apologized very politely. He had been avoiding the battle, which was indeed disrespectful to his opponent. Then his expression became serious. Then, let me hear your thoughts. What do you think of this world now? View. Lee Jae-Baluo was a little confused. If he couldn't beat him, he couldn't beat him. Why did he start talking about philosophy? Don't you think this world is dark, lonely, and very hopeless? Kyoraku Shunsui said intuitively, regardless of Lee Jae-Baluo's reaction. I see, is this your ability? The surrounding scenery has indeed become slightly darker. Is this your Bankai? Among the information that Rijibaro has, there is only Kyoraku Shunsui's Shikai, and there is no information about Bankai. But he could probably guess that all these changes were caused by Bankai. Yes, this is my Bankai. There is indeed some darkness, but it is far from despair. Because. Saying that, Rijibaro spread his wings and stared at Kyoraku Shunsui with an almost scrutinizing gaze suspended in midair, because the messenger of God will never despair. Boom. A loud noise was heard, and nearly 1/5 of the real-world city of the Spirit King Palace was instantly broken, and the ruins fell downwards. Although we don't have any information about you Bankai, there is one fact that is absolutely unmistakable. As long as the owner of the knife dies, Bankai will disappear. As Lijibalo said, he suddenly felt a burst of pain, which made him frown. Glancing at it, I saw that there was a wound on my waist, similar to the wound caused by my own spirit bullet on Kyoraku Shunsui's shoulder. The first paragraph, hesitant trauma sharing. Give each other your body. I have to share the damage caused and reflect it on my body. This ability allows Kyōraku Shunsui to share the injuries sustained by Rijibalo with the opponent intact, but the injuries he suffered before will not heal or disappear. Vice versa, the damage Kyōraku inflicted on the enemy will also reappear on Kyōraku. In other words, it's a life for a life. Seraiti. Isn't the shape of this wound the same as the wound that Jetbaro inflicted on Kyōraku's shoulder before? It was actually fed back to the other party. Tōshirō was very surprised. In this case, Jetbaro would not dare to attack Kyōraku casually. Shunsui attacks. The body that even Hado 78 can't harm, Bankai's first move was perfectly resolved. Captain Kyōband, you are so strong. Hinamori Momo looked at Kyōraku Shunsui eagerly. It seemed that he was too ignorant before. In a battle of this level, it would be a hindrance if he went on his own. Hira nodded in agreement. What a special ability. The leader of the Beijing band has hidden it so well. This compliment made Kyōraku Shunsui a little embarrassed, and he quickly waved his hand and said, it's not very strong. This ability also has shortcomings. He looked at Kurotsuchi Mayuri and smiled lightly. There is no such thing as perfection, right, Captain Nirvana? Kurotsuchi Mayuri sneered. Captain Kyo 157, are you so anxious for me to praise you? You can't kill Rijibaro with just this move. Kyōraku Shunsui stroked his hat. Of course I know there are many moves waiting for him later. Invisible Empire. What the hell, you actually caused harm to my body, I am the body of a god. Lee Jibaluo frowned tightly, with angry flames burning in his black eyes. The ability to rebound damage is ridiculous. It stands to reason that this wound was caused by you yourself. Asanat narrowed his eyes slightly. I just didn't expect that this kind of rebound ability could actually rebound Bankai. Previous injuries. Quote. He originally thought that Bankai was a limit. Even if the first stage of the ability, hesitation trauma sharing, could rebound damage, it should still be the same as Bankai's injuries. It's interesting. Yasukin looked delighted. It was very strange to finally see a Shinigami's Bankai, even without his own lethality and Panita's weak nerve control. This rebound is the first stage. Does that mean there are other capabilities in the future? Musk scratched his head and couldn't help but worry about Lille Barro. Return to the video screen. But, unfortunately, you will never die from this. Kyōraku Shunsui understood that these wounds alone could not kill Rijibaro. Lee Jibaluo was a little confused and had no idea what was happening. How did you do such a thing? As I said just now, this is my Bankai. Kyōraku Shunsui had said enough. He said no more and directly released the second paragraph. In the heart of Katen Kyōkotsu Kuromatsu, the interlude narration ends here. The cold fight is the climax of the whole performance. Then, the second paragraph, the mattress of shame. In an instant, every part of Rijibalo's body was covered with black Madara. A person who regrets causing harm to his opponent will be bedridden with shame and suffer from an incurable disease. Kyōraku Shunsui explained. The next moment, these black Madara dots kept oozing blood, as if they were suffering from a disease. It was extremely disgusting. Lee Jibaluo was at a loss, and even his eyes were overflowing with blood. Invisible Empire. What? Is there any disease? Lee Jibaluo swallowed secretly. Seeing the blood overflowing all over his body, he felt very uncomfortable. Bankai and Shikai are completely unrelated, but their strength is dozens of times higher than Shikai. Bambietta was shocked. Ace not frowned. Maybe it's because of the double swords. There may be other moves later. Seraiti. This is so cruel. Do you want Rijibaro to bleed to death? Rukia unconsciously took a step back, intending to stay away from Kyōraku Shunsui. I didn't expect Kyōraku Shunsui's Bankai to have such cruel moves. Kyōraku Shunsui smiled. It would be great if Rijibaro could really bleed to death. Return to the video screen. Looking at Rijibaro, who was covered in bloodline, Kyōraku Shunsui's expression remained normal and he continued to activate his ability without any hesitation. Katen Kyōkotsu Kuromatsu Heart, 3rd Section, Danubuchi. Chapter 153. Beheading. Lee Jibaluo transformed into Kun, 2.5 years of skill. Please subscribe. Katen Kyōkotsu Kuromatsu Heart, 3rd Section, Danubuchi. Peering into the abyss of despair, the awakened people plunged into the gushing water together until each other's Reiatsu was exhausted. Wow. Suddenly, it was as if Senju Tobarama was using sea escape in the real-world city, and a large number of water waves appeared, as deep as the sea. Lee Jibaluo sank to the bottom of the water without any warning, and his breathing bubbles continued to float to the surface, as if he was in a dragon's palace under the sea. Not only Lijibaro, Yuan Laquan Shui is also the minister under the water. This move uses Reiatsu to create a large-scale water body. Regardless of whether it is friend or foe, anyone within the game range will be forcibly dragged into the deep water until the Reiatsu is exhausted. Therefore, Kyōraku Shunsui will never use Bankai under normal circumstances, otherwise it will damage the enemy by 1000 and damage himself by 800. Invisible Empire. It turned into an ocean. Is this the third stage of Kyōraku Shunsui Bankai's ability? A Senate couldn't help but swallowed. This level of deep water is probably not something ordinary people can do. What's more, this is deep water created by Reiatsu, which is simply incomprehensible. It is indeed very common to use Reiatsu as a weapon, but have you ever seen a vast ocean created with Reiatsu? It's interesting. We just created a disease, which caused countless blood Madaras to appear on Lijia's body. Now we have created an ocean. This Kyōraku Shunsui is much stronger than the Kurotsuchi Mayuri. Giselle frowned. Kurotsuchi Mayuri relies entirely on technology, while Kyōraku Shunsui fully utilizes the weird abilities created by Bankai. Putting aside external factors, it is very reasonable for Kyōraku Shunsui to be ranked in front of Kurotsuchi Mayuri. In deep water of this size, even if you use Reiatsu to stay in the water, it won't last long. Hegiero, you are really in danger this time, said the Emperor's killing bell spirit. Rigiballo's brows knitted together. While he couldn't understand, he looked at Kyōraku Shunsui with admiration. How great it would be if he had shown such strength earlier. Saraiti. Nani, that deep water was created by the leader of the Beijing band. It's so terrifying. Shuhei's pupils were as wide as summoning. There was no Zanpakuto with a water attribute among Shinigami's captains, but he was used as the main attacker. The third blade in Arankar Espada is Haribel. Shuhei had a profound influence on Haribel at that time. Even though she did not defeat Tōshirō openly, her water-type attacks were absolutely unmatched by anyone. But now it seems that compared to Kyōraku Shunsui's Duan Yuan, Haribel's strongest killing move, Duan Waterfall, pales in comparison. To be precise, I made it with Reiatsu. Kyōraku Shunsui stroked the hat. His expression did not change at all, as if all this was what he expected. Of course, this water does not cover the entire real-world city. It is only within the scope of the game that the group will be pulled into the deep sea. So his Bankai must make sure that no teammates appear around him. Otherwise, your teammates will be injured too. Fortunately we walked fast, otherwise not only Lille Barro, but also we would have been trapped in the water. Hinamori Momo sighed and looked at Rukia. Rukia nodded. Captain Kyoto has ulterior motives, we must believe him. Return to the video screen. Well, when Lijiballo entered the deep water, he suddenly felt difficulty breathing. Even with 8 wings, he was as desolate as a messenger who had fallen into hell. He tried hard to escape from the deep water, but then he realized something was wrong. No matter how hard he flaps his wings, he can't get closer to the water, but gets further and further away from the water. Kyōraku Shunsui saw through Rizabaro's thoughts. This is natural, isn't it? Because we are in deep water, so no matter how hard you flap your wings, it won't help. But, I can understand your feelings. He stood on the roof of the building in the real-world city, looked at the struggling Li Beluo, waved his hand and continued, in the cold water, the consciousness you once had will be disintegrated by the cold. However, suddenly a female voice came from beside Kyōraku Shunsui, but this is just your self-righteousness, it's not that sad. You can't understand the pitifulness of a man who made a promise, and the love of a woman who was abandoned but still unforgettable and invites you, right? Zhou Zhangzhou. A woman with skull-shaped patterns on her clothes and headdress, long and curly hair, and an eye patch on her right eye has her hands around Kyōraku Shunsui's neck. Kyōraku Shunsui glanced back, long time no see. Shalwa. As that, the materialization of Kyōband leader Zanpakuto. Kashiwamura Sajin outside the video widened his eyes. He did not expect that Zanpakuto's materialization would appear in this situation. Kyōraku Shunsui nodded, this is one of the smallpox mad bones materialized. The right eye is wearing an eye patch, which is somewhat similar to Kyōraku Shunsui in the video. You and the leader of the Peking band look quite like a couple. Sui Feng smiled lightly and teased. Yeah, you can't joke about this kind of thing. It's just that we both wear eye patches on our right eyes, but no husband and wife say that. Kyōraku Shunsui hurriedly wiped his hands. If this counts as a couple, Zaraki Kenpachi has to be included too. Return to the video screen. Shalwa, do I know you very well? Huatian didn't buy it at all. He squinted at Kyōraku Shunsui with his beautiful eyes and continued. Master, who only occasionally plays with me, still has the nerve to call me that. This is a heartless man. Kyōraku Shunsui quickly explained. Okay, don't say that, I'm sorry, Shalwa. After chatting for a few words, Huatian began to check the wounds on Kyōraku Shunsui. Your kimono seems to have been torn open. You always wear the clothes of women outside as a gown, so it becomes this is really embarrassing. You're still the same, so mean. Kyōraku Shunsui complained. There is no difference between this and the Yulu Ziliu from Mole City Shuangye. Being mean is the master's sword. No matter whether you like it or not, you must accept it. We are companions who have promised to go to hell together. The corner of Hua Tian's mouth raised slightly. Rijibaro in the distance was already confused. He couldn't see Zanpakuto's physical form, so he asked, who are you talking to? Kyōraku Shunsui didn't bother to pay attention to him. Do you think the victory has been decided? Do you think you can kill me? Rijibaro rushed towards Kyōraku Shunsui below. Bankai, a mere Shinigami, don't even think you can kill me. Seeing this, Kyōraku Shunsui held the sword in both hands. The woman's emotions are sad and pitiful, but the men who are fighting everywhere turn a deaf ear. The light of love turns into white silk full of nostalgia. If you want to give up, you can only cut it off with your own hands. Kyōraku Shunsui said, raising his index and middle fingers together. If you want to give it up, you can only cut it off with your own hands, this miserable entangled thread, full of nostalgia. Finally, the last scene, the ending. Bury it, the final chapter. Hattori's throat is stained with iron and blood. Kyōraku Shunsui put the zanpakuto he had just held back into the scabbard with both hands. The spirit seeds condensed on his fingertips turned into white silky spirit seeds and wrapped around Rijibaro's neck. Then he waved his arms and the threads condensed in one breath. Freed. Wow. Blood dyed the seawater around Lille Barro, and a large number of spherical spirit particles poured out from his cut neck, which exploded in an instant. A cut throat. No sloppiness. Is there an ending? Aizen smiled slightly outside the video, showing a strong interest in Kyōraku Shunsui's Bankai. From the first period of hesitating about sharing the trauma, to the last period of cutting the iron and blood staining the throat, the damage is gradual and gradually increases. But once you fall into the trap of the first paragraph, there is no way to escape from it. The only choice waiting for your opponent is death. Seraiti. Awesome. Captain Kyobaku, Lille Barro really deserves to die now. Kashiwamura Sajin's face was filled with joy. I originally thought that creating deep water that consumes Rijibaro's life would be Bankai's strongest move, but I didn't expect that there is another strongest attack. Hattori's iron-blooded throat is released almost instantly. Even if he is not in deep water, there is no way to avoid it. What's more, being in the water of Duanyuan, it's basically a one-hit kill. Is that move of mine cool? Kyōraku Shunsui laughed nonchalantly. Captain, let me give you a compliment. You have reached heaven again, right? Eyes Nanao glanced at Kyōraku Shunsui angrily. After this combination of skills, I can see it. Kira looked around and said immediately, Captain Kyoban's Bankai is the strongest Bankai besides the captain. Yeah, I like hearing this. Kyōraku Shunsui clapped his hands. Actually, it's not that amazing anymore. If the other party had my information in advance, it might not be so easy to deal with Lee Jabaluo. Kashiwamura Sajin shook his head. Isn't this also the key to victory? Invisible Empire. Lee Jabaluo frowned tightly. His face looked ugly. Don't think you can defeat me like this. Next, I will let you see what the terrifying calendar area is. Although Kyōraku Shunsui's Bankai combo is very lethal, it's still a long way from killing a man who is close to a god. Liji, don't give Kyōraku Shunsui any chance, just kill him. Gerald looked at Lee Jabaluo and said in a plea. Lee Jabaluo nodded, looking at Shinigami's self-righteous look, he was also very angry. The video continues to play. Using Kyōraku Shunsui in the final stage, the load on the body was overloaded, and the body fell downwards. At this time, Katen stretched out his hands to catch Kyōraku Shunsui who was leaning backward. Oh, I can actually rest my head on Shalwa's lap. It's not bad to Bankai once in a while. Kyōraku Shunsui joked nonchalantly. When Huashin heard this, he raised his hand slightly and thrust it downwards in the shape of a claw. Wow. Kyōraku Shunsui quickly turned away and breathed a long sigh of relief. Spare me, I also only have one eye left. If this claw were to go down, it would probably lose its light from now on. It turned out to be like me. The relationship between the sword and the Shinigami is really incredible. Huashin complained. Kyōraku Shunsui looked at Rijibaro's corpse in the distance with a relaxed expression. Huashin also said, but no matter what, as long as you can win. Oh, what's the matter? You are very candid today. Kyōraku Shunsui was still indifferent. Shut up if you only have half a life left. Little flower. I. Before he finished speaking, a beam of spirit beam penetrated Kyōraku Shunsui's chest from below and rushed into the sky. I just said that, didn't I? Lee Jabaluo's voice sounded again, and the blown-off head began to slowly gather spirit elements. Bankai, a mere Shinigami, don't think you can kill Shinigami's messenger. What? Lee Jabaluo is not dead yet. Rukia's eyes trembled. She couldn't believe that a person whose head was blown off could still be alive. Could it be that Rijibaro is also the body organ of the Spirit King? But after the battle, there seemed to be no indication that he was the Spirit King at all. Information about organs. You won't die even if you do this. I finally understand that Lijibaro said that he is the most outstanding work of Yuhabach. Tōshirō swallowed secretly, his vitality is so tenacious. Even more outrageous than Panita. Captain Kyōraku, that guy seems to be fine. Do you have any other moves? Hinamori Momo put her hands on her chin, worried, and looked at Kyōraku Shunsui expectantly. Kyōraku Shunsui changed his relaxed look. If Bankai's final step couldn't kill Rijibaro, I'm afraid the remaining methods he had were useless. Jashiro noticed Kyōraku Shunsui's gloomy expression and answered, just trust Kyōraku and leave the rest alone. He also knows that at this stage of the battle, Kyōraku Shunsui's chances of winning are very slim. But he supports Kyōraku Shunsui unconditionally. Abominable B*************, they are so frivolous in front of me. I really don't want to live anymore. Lee Jabaluo of the Invisible Empire gritted his teeth. In the ensuing battle, it was Kyōraku Shunsui who felt desperate. Return to the video screen. The head that the spirits slowly gathered was not in human form, but turned into the head of a long-necked bird, and the body also extended into silk legs like a mantis. Turned into a chicken. At least 2.5 years of skill. How could this happen? You can't die by beheading the capital. It's really nerve-wracking. At this time, the deep water has been lifted. Kyōraku Shunsui looked at the monster with a chicken head and a bird head in the sky. After turning into an alien, Rijibaro stared at Kyōraku Shunsui with a smart look. This is despair, Kyōraku Shunsui. You can't kill him with weapons, you can't kill him by beheading him with Reiatsu. The despair that a sinful person feels when faced with such a situation. I am immortal, I am invincible. I am a privileged messenger of God. Lijibalo stuck out his bird head and said in a sharp voice, people who have always been guilty of sins can only sit back and wait for death when facing me, the messenger of God. The pheasant turned into a phoenix. After flipping in the air for a week, he raised his arm and a spiritual laser quickly cut down towards Kyōraku Shunsui's position. Another section of building collapsed and fell. Chicken. This guy turned into a chicken. Omade outside the video said in shock. And he's still immortal. Kyōraku Shunsui has absolutely no hope of victory. The strange opposite S*X seems to be a monster. A casual blow can cause the Spirit King's palace to collapse. If I can't defeat such an opponent, Wang Zhao of Wang Zhao, don't blame me. Kyōraku Shunsui was destroyed in advance, and decapitation was the maximum he could do, but in the end, Lille Barro transformed directly. The appearance after transformation seems to be stronger than the previous form. There's no way around it unless it's ruined. This is much more difficult to deal with than Panida. Captain Kyōraku, even if you are defeated, we will not blame you. Komamura Sajin understands that such an opponent, let alone Kyōraku Shunsui, is. Even if they and Shinigami play together, victory may not be guaranteed. It's good to understand, it's good to understand. Kyōraku Shunsui waved his hand, and then said with a solemn expression, having said that, if I find a flaw, I will never be lenient. Invisible Empire. Rijibalo, is this the complete form of your holy body? Or is it a split body? Shiruji was also curious. They have not had the chance to see Rijibalo enter the complete body, let alone the divided body. During a normal fight, that guy wouldn't even open his eyes. That's my full body, Litbaro explained. When he was bragging before, he brought his complete body and split body. In fact, the complete body is his strongest form, and the split body will only be used when he has to. At that time, he has already. Sutra cannot be penetrated by all things. In other words, the split body is used to save lives. Kyōraku Shunsui has exhausted all his strength, but the victory has just begun. The corner of Gerald's mouth raised. You don't want to know the outcome of this battle, right? The video continues to play. Li Jaba-luo's pair of bird's eyes continued to be smart, looking at the exploding building, looking a little confused. He knew that Kyōraku Shunsui was not dead and must be hiding behind the building tower below. You still have the strength to escape my light of punishment. Although I used the pure light to clean out a hole in the belly of the black heart, you are worthy of being the captain. The sin is really so profound. Zhou Zhangzhou, let's go. Huatian, who was hiding behind the tower, said in Kyōraku Shunsui's ear. In this heart of withered pine trees, facing the enemy with immortality, we have no choice but to do anything. Chapter 154, Dual Blade Entity, Kuang Ji Yu is the child of Jingla and Tianpo. Huatian couldn't bear it anymore and continued to persuade. Master has tried his best to fight until his will disappears and he dies. Even if we escape from here, no one will blame the master. Her hand gently touched Kyōraku Shunsui's shoulder. Come on, let's get some sleep first. During this time, I'll take you to escape. Shun Shui lowered his head in silence, and his consciousness began to blur. However, at this moment, a familiar voice brought him back to consciousness. Captain of the Kyoko Orchestra, get up, please get up quickly. Captain. Nanao appeared in front of Shunsui, grabbed the latter's collar with both hands, and roared with all his strength. Little Nanao. Shunsui slowly opened his eyes and looked up. When he saw Nanao appearing, a large amount of blood spurted out of his mouth. He was very lucky that his Bankai did not affect Nanao. But his situation was not optimistic. After his body was penetrated, he coughed one after another with blood, which made Nanao panic. Okay, stop talking. Nanao frowned. Please give me my Zanpakuto. Did Vice Captain eyes rush over anyway? Rukia outside the video frowned and looked at Nanao. After Nanao asked everyone to leave, she did not run away together, but turned back to look for Kyōraku Shunsui, which moved Rukia very much. Oh my, Xiao Nanao, are you stupid? Why are you rushing over at this time? Run away. Shunsui's eyes under the bamboo hat glanced at Nanao. According to Nanao's temperament, he knew that this was inevitable. But he didn't want to watch helplessly as Bisu and himself perished. Captain, I am your vice captain. If I am not by your side at this time, I am not worthy to be the vice captain of the 8th Division. Nanao's eyes were very determined. Jashiro showed a meaningful smile. Jinraku, just be satisfied if you can have such a vice captain. Vice Captain Aiza's Zanpakuto. Omeda changed the topic and asked in surprise, is your Zanpakuto held by Captain Kyoband? Nanao does not wear Zanpakuto on weekdays. Even in battle, she uses Kido to attack. The Shinigami have never seen Nanao use Zanpakuto, and they even thought that Nanao's Zanpakuto ability was not suitable for fighting, so they did not wear it. Nanao stroked the frame of her glasses and looked at Shunsui with a somewhat panicked expression. She knew that the Zanpakuto she mentioned in the video was the Divine Sword 8 Mirror Sword. Of course, this is not her exclusive Zanpakuto, but the only Zanpakuto of the Shinto family Ai's family that has been passed down from generation to generation. Even though Shunsui has never mentioned it, Nanao knows that the Divine Sword 8 Mirror Sword has always been preserved in Shunsui. Now that Kyōraku Shunsui is unable to fight, she must fight with a sword. Yes, it's in the custody of the band leader. Nanao hesitated for a few seconds and then said, 470. Kyōraku Shunsui's eyes darkened. It seems that paper cannot contain the fire. Return to the video screen. Kyōraku Shunsui was shocked when he heard Nanao begging for Zanpakuto, but his eyes darkened the next second. There is no time to hesitate now, hurry up. Nanao was very anxious. Despite this, Kyōraku Shunsui said nothing. As for your agreement with Tatami, please forget it for now. Nanao's sudden words made Kyōraku Shunsui feel nervous and at a loss. Why does Nanao know these things? What are you doing? Why is it so noisy? It turns out that the adjutant is back. Lee Jibaluo was already chasing him. His huge body was suspended in midair, staring at the two people below. Captain finally let you escape. You really don't understand the value of life. It's such a sin. Kyōraku Shunsui ignored Lee Jibaluo and sighed, with a hint of helplessness in his eyes. Kwang. Another beam of light fell from Rijibalo, but Kyōraku Shunsui had disappeared. Escaped again. My eyes are so dry. He complained. My eyes are so dry when I keep staring at sinful people. This is one of the shortcomings of God's sanction, the final form. His eyes are often dry. Kyōraku Shunsui, who fled into the shadows, looked at Nanao and lowered his head. Have you noticed anything about your mother? Yes. Do you know it's been a long time at this point? Yes. Alas, I'm really defeated by you. Kyōraku Shunsui sighed. I have no choice but to give it back to you, your Zanpakuto. Crazy bone. At this time, a girl with short hair and a single skull headdress on the left side, her face covered by a mask and hair, with only her right eye visible, appeared behind Shungshu. Seraiti. Crazy bone. Is it the Zanpakuto of Vice Captain Eyes? Isn't that one of the Zanpakuto pairs of Captain Kyōraku? Kyōraku Shunsui looked at Kyōraku Shunsui in surprise. Just like Jashiro's Pisces carps, they are complete in pairs. There is no way there are two Zanpakuto. In that case, Captain Kyōraku, you haven't always been occupying Vice Captain Aiza's Zanpakuto and using it for your own battles. It's so sinister. Irangaku glanced at Kyōraku Shunsui. How can any captain take away the Vice Captain Zanpakuto? Hearing this, Kyōraku Shunsui twitched the corner of his mouth and quickly explained. Who do you think I am? How could I take Xiao Nanao's Zanpakuto for my own use? Although Kwang Ji-yu is her Zanpakuto, but not quite. Beffa. What you said is so contradictory, Kyōraku Shunsui. Zaraki Kenpachi snorted. Yes means it. No means no. Yes but not exactly. What the hell is that? Kyōraku Shunsui shook his head and waved his hands. Oh, it's a bit complicated. Don't be so 8 trigrams, okay. The video screen continues to play. Crazy bones. Nanao was stunned, not understanding what Kyōraku Shunsui meant. What's going on? I know that the smallpox mad bone is composed of smallpox and mad bone, but the mad bone is my Zanpakuto. Yes. Shunsui closed his eyes slightly. But not entirely. There is a little difference, but Shalwa gave birth to a Kuang just to hide your Zanpakuto, and this was also done at your mother's request. Quote. Why is this? Nanao became more curious. The Ai's family is a matrilineal family. According to records, all newborns in the family are female, without exception. Therefore, we can only recruit sons-in-law from outside to continue the bloodline. It is said that men who enter the Ai's family will die young due to the curse of the Ai's family. Although some people thought that the knowledge about curses was nonsense, she didn't think so. She wanted to break this rumor, so she decided to sever ties with the Ai's family and married away. The ending was, my husband died soon after. Chun Shui sighed. She is my brother's wife. My brother and I couldn't get along at all, but since she came, the atmosphere between us has changed. My brother's home has become more and more restrictive. I often go to my brother's house to play and even play in the corridor. I took a nap, but my brother still died. In aristocratic families, if a man in the family dies, the relationship with the married person is severed and the person is sent back to her natal family, so she returned to the Ai's family. Sure enough, the women of Ai's cannot escape the Ai's family, nor can they escape the curse of the Ai's family, maybe because of that sword. Chunshui's face was extremely dark. She desperately wanted her daughter to escape the curse, so she entrusted the sword to me and hid it in the body of Kwang, who likes to hide and seek. After saying that, Kwang Ji-yu touched his mask, and his hand reached directly into the darkness. In Shishu's shocked eyes, Kwang Ji-yu pulled out something wrapped in a green cloth bag. Seraiti. So that's it. Madarame Makaku is indeed not Vice Captain Aizen's Zanpakuto, but she was indeed bred for Zanpakuto. No wonder the leader of the Kyōband would say that. Madarame Makaku suddenly realized. Yumashika's eyes lit up. The story Captain Kyōband just told. Vice Captain Aizen is your brother's child, right? Although Kyōraku Shunsui didn't just say it in the video, basically everyone can guess it. In this case, Nanao is Shunsui's niece. Except for Jashiro, no one else really knows about this relationship. Shunsui nodded and looked at Shishu beside him uncomfortably. He felt a little guilty for hiding it for so long. But this is to fulfill the promise made to my sister-in-law. At this moment, he felt a little pain in his heart. In order to free her soon-to-be-born daughter from the curse of the sword, Nanao's mother entrusted the sword to him for safekeeping. To prevent the curse from taking effect again, he hid the 8-mirror sword in Katen Kyōkotsu so that it would never see the light of day. He could understand his sister-in-law's good intentions. Captain Kyoto, if the crazy bones were cultivated by smallpox in order to seal Zanpakuto, then the process of cultivating the crazy bones by smallpox must have a lot to do with you. At this time, Kurotsuchi Mayuri looked at Kyōraku Shunsui with a cold smile. Ahem. Kyōraku Shunsui covered his mouth and coughed twice. This paragraph cannot be broadcast. What does it matter? Captain Nirvana, please don't spread rumors. Eyes Nanao. Why did the atmosphere change all of a sudden? Nanao in the video lowered his head. I understand. Captain, the reason why you don't want to hand over this sword to me is for my sake, right? Just like my mother decided to give up the curse because of her own will, I also decided to accept the curse because of my own will. Besides, even if I accept the curse, no, my intuition tells me that the person I have always admired will definitely laugh and say, curses and stuff are just nonsense. Nanao stared at Kyōraku Shunsui expectantly and said calmly. Shunsui was briefly surprised, but he already understood Nanao's will in his heart. He released his hold on Zanpakuto's hand and said in a deep voice, I understand, I'll leave it to you. He pulled off the cloth wrapping Zanpakuto. Not everyone has their own Zanpakuto, but as a clan leader, he will inherit a Zanpakuto that has been passed down from generation to generation. This sword is only used for sacrifice. It is an unedged sword. It is ineffective on humans and cannot kill anyone. It confronts God, accepts the power of God with its own body, and has the ability to spread power to all directions. Its name is Kenpachi Mirror Sword of God. The heart is like a mirror Shisui, divine sword 8-mirror sword. Is it the cursed sword passed down by the Shinto family? Aizen outside the video looked at the ruler-shaped Zanpakuto with 4 prisms on both sides of the sword, and smiled slightly. It's really interesting. Even he had never heard of the deeds of the Shinto Aizen family, but now an inherited divine sword appeared. This surprised Aizen. This sword does not kill mortals, it is only used for gods. Rijabalo claims to be the messenger of God, and he can be considered a half-god. Isn't this perfect restraint? Invisible empire. It's ridiculous. Is there really a god-slaying Zanpakuto? Stop joking. Rijabaro listened to Kyōraku Shunsui's introduction to the 8-mirror sword, with a disdainful smile on his face. It's better to believe that it exists than to believe that it doesn't exist. Liji, since the Kenpachi mirror sword is hidden so deeply, maybe it really has a strange effect. Gerald frowned and advised Lijiba. It is better not to underestimate the enemy. Rijabaro disagreed. Do you believe this? Kyōraku Shunsui's Bankai is completely useless to me, and a Zanpakuto that doesn't even have a blade, will you definitely be useful to me? Quote. Yes, Gerard, you are too sensitive. Bambietta also said. Besides, you are not a god, you are a chicken, no, you are a bird. Lijabalo glanced at Bambietta fiercely. Naturally, he did not explain the effect of the 8-mirror sword in detail, he was just bluffing people. Seraiti. Just like my mother decided to give up the curse because of her own will, I also decided to accept the curse because of my own will. Vice Captain Aizen's words are so touching. There were tears in Rangaku's eyes. What the Aizen family has sealed can only be unlocked by the Aizen family. The 8-mirror sword. I have heard some rumors, but I didn't expect it to really exist, and it is still kept by the Kyōraku captain. Sui Feng looked at Kyōraku Shunsui in disbelief. If the curse is true, then the power of the 8-mirror sword is definitely true. Kyōraku Shunsui suddenly lost his composure and pouted. Captain Sui Feng, where did you hear the rumors? Please avoid 8 trigrams from now on. Sui Feng. At this time, the scene changed. Outside Aizen's house. Nanao's mother hands the 8-mirror sword to the young man Kyōraku Shunsui. I can't take such a precious thing. This is something that will only affect the people of the Aizen family. If you hold it, it will not bring you any misfortune or disaster. People other than the Aizen family, it's just you. However, these words were heard by Aizen Nanao who was hiding in the courtyard. What first caught Nanao's attention was the bun Kyōraku Shunsui wore on her head. She often heard people talking about Kyōraku Shunsui. She was standing in the distance looking at the background of Kyoryu. She was wearing very fancy women's clothes. The colors were extremely ordinary and could be seen everywhere, but she looked similar to her mother. Later, When she joined the 8th Division, she became even more certain that the person to whom her mother entrusted a certain important item was Kyōraku Shunsui. The scene returned to the battlefield in the real-world city. Disappeared. Where did he hide? Lee Jae-Luo looked around, and then activated the super transformation form. The bird's head instantly turned into a huge millstone, and the distance between the two eyes was widened. Very far. At the same time, it broadens the horizons. What's going on? Where is it? He looked at the place where Kyōraku Shunsui first disappeared and found a shadow there. I see, the shadow ghost can actually stay in the shadow for such a long time, so. He opened his palm and gathered a ball of light, and the dazzling light spread instantly. In this way, if the shadow disappears from the ground, you will come out. He wanted to cover the shadow with light and force Kyōraku Shunsui to appear. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. Eyes Nanao holds the 8-mirror sword and is coming menacingly. You can actually run out of such a small shadow. Lee Jae-Luo was a little surprised, and then he noticed the sword in Nanao's hand. Huh, what's the matter with that sword? It can emit such a vulgar light that makes people unable to see the blade clearly. It's really an eyesore. Really, that's great. This sword can reflect the power of God when you confront God. The reason why you feel dazzled is precisely because of the light of God you release is reflected into your eyes. Nanao smiled coldly and breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. It seems that the 8-mirror sword is not in vain. Lee Jae-Luo turned his long neck and turned his head upside down, looking a little not very smart. Huh. I don't understand what you are talking about at all, but it feels good to be called a god. Nanao jumped up bravely and waved the 8-mirror sword. Lille Barro was in disbelief. Are you going to kill me with that sword? Okay, let's try it. The next second, he stretched out his arm and directly blocked the 8-mirror sword, and then flicked Nanao away. Nanao was stunned. How could he block it? He must have been defenseless. Lee Jae-Luo was very disdainful. That kind of knife without even a blade actually wanted to kill him. But now you're finished. That blow you just made could indeed kill me. He stretched out his hand and gathered a huge halo in the sky. Nanao was at a loss what to do and froze on the spot. As a messenger of God, I will never let down my guard again. Lee Jae-Luo was determined to kill. At the critical moment, Nanao suddenly felt a warmth in her arm. Kyōraku Shunsui's big hand had already grasped her knife-holding arm, and the voice of a sharp sense of security sounded in her ears. I'm going to FKU, Nanao-chan. Chapter 155. The Dead Man in the Grave, Kira is Resurrected. Please subscribe. I thought it was all my fault. When the scene changed, the young Kyōraku Shunsui got the news that his sister-in-law had been executed, and his expression suddenly tightened. Yeah, I heard that he was found guilty by Room 46 for missing the artifact. It seems like he was executed yesterday. Teammate Shinigami said. Hearing this, Kyōraku Shunsui froze in place, with mixed feelings. Sorry, I really shouldn't have told you. That's not the case. It's great to be able to talk about it earlier. Then there was a scene of Kyōraku Shunsui's eldest brother being critically ill. He handed his wife's hairpin to Kyōraku Shunsui, intending to entrust his wife and daughter to Shunsui. Why is this happening? After everyone entrusts their important things to me, they will pass away. I obviously can't bear this kind of pain. Nanao, I don't want anyone to entrust me with that sword anymore. In order to lighten the burden on my shoulders, Nanao, please let me protect you. Saraiti. Captain Kyoband, it's a good thing you showed up. Otherwise, Vice Captain Aizen's heart was shaken, and he would definitely not be a match for Rijibaro. Omeda looked at Aizen Nanao. Nanao in the video was terrified. Even though she had the courage to accept the curse, she still couldn't take a single step in the face of the ferocious bird-shaped monster named Rijibaro. Kyōraku Shunsui frowned. The picture that comes to mind. Huh, is it enough to just wear one? Why? The eldest brother said curiously while holding the hairpin. The other one is left for you. When you fight against the void and I am not by your side, if we hold the same thing, you can feel my support. The sister-in-law smiled slightly. At that time, Kyōraku Shunsui was actually hiding aside and watching all this secretly. Since then, he felt that he had become much gentler. If I seem to have really softened, then maybe her kindness has influenced me. Kyōraku Shunsui thought to himself. The leader of the Beijing band must be feeling very guilty. Sui Feng looked at the silent Kyōraku Shunsui. He was sentenced to death by Room 46 for losing the God Kenpachi mirror sword, and the 8-mirror sword has been kept in Kyōraku Shunsui. If the team members hadn't told him, he would probably still be in the dark. Kyōraku Shunsui's silence was short, and soon he raised the corner of his mouth. It has been so many years, and it is amazing that one day it can be made public. Turning to look at Nanao. Little Nanao, just fight. Nanao nodded her head with moving eyes. I believe in the captain. In the video, Nanao stepped forward again waving the 8-mirror sword. But there was a rain of divine light in the sky, and she was shot down again and flew out. She had never thought before that fighting with a sword could be such a terrifying thing. Just a look from Lee Jae-Luo made her heart beat faster. At this time, a drop of blood flowed down the leg to the instep. Nanao felt pain and broke out in cold sweat. The light that Lille Barro shot out just now would hit her if she wasn't careful. This wound should be caused by the light bullet just now. She gasped for air. It turns out that being hit is so painful. It hurts so much, so terrible. I can't move my feet at all. It was at this time that she felt the big hand holding her arm. Team leader. Invisible Empire. He's just a loser. He's been injured so badly, but he still wants to show off. Lille Barro was full of displeasure, making himself seem like a bully. Ha ha ha, Lille, even if you kill these two people, it's not honorable. Jared laughed and teased. One is a little girl who has not experienced strong winds and waves, and the other is a little old man who only has half his life left. Is this still considered an opponent? What's so honorable and disgraceful? Since Kyōraku Shunsui wants to die so much, I'll help him. Rijibaro frowned fiercely. What's the point of talking about protection? I want you to see with your own eyes what the difference in power is. You can't protect anything. In the video, Lille Barro once again released a torrential rain of light bombs, attacking below indiscriminately. After seeing Kyōraku Shunsui standing behind Nanao, he was slightly startled. Have you finally come out? I really can't stand you. You are hiding behind your subordinates. You are such a bad captain. After listening to God's trumpet, go to hell. As he spoke, he raised his hands high and used a large number of souls to create a giant trumpet. He put one hand to his mouth and blew forward, making a harsh sound instantly. I'm going to FKU, Nanao-chan. Kyōraku Shunsui leaned against Nanao's ear and said softly, don't be afraid, I am behind you to support you. Nanao closed her eyes. The captain's gentleness is conveyed to my whole body. I came back here intending to support the captain, but instead I received support from the captain. I couldn't even stand alone, but the captain was always supporting me from behind. Boom. At this time, the sound that penetrated through annihilation destroyed most of the buildings in the real-world city. But the next second, a sword light that was enough to cut the Spirit King Palace in two fell quickly, and Lille Barro's body was instantly broken in half. Ah, really? Lijibalo stroked the broken wound. You just said you can reflect the power of God, right? HMPH, reflecting the power of God is really a sin. A person is about to die, but his mouth is still hard. With this blow, Lille Barro was shattered into pieces, and huge 8-petal wings and a large number of spirit seeds floated down, giving the uncle and nephew a romantic visual feast. This should be the end, right? Lijibaro has been defeated. He is so useless. I thought he was really immortal. Lilinite grinned outside the video, feeling very unhappy. She was on the side of Ritsubaro before, thinking that Kyōraku Shunsui could be defeated, but in the end, she was cut in half by the combined attack of Kyōraku Shunsui and Nanao. If the power of killing gods takes effect, wouldn't he die immediately? No matter how powerful the Quincy is, there are ways to deal with it. The last Panita met the technological master Kurotsuchi Mayuri, while Rijibalo met the god Kenpachi mirror sword. Both of them were perfectly restrained. Stark shook his head. Sorry. As Arankar, he is neutral towards the Quincy and Shinigami. There is no favoritism, but the impact of this restraint relationship is simply incredible. If the opponents are changed, Kyōraku Shunsui versus Panita, and Kurotsuchi Mayuri versus Ritsubaro, the result is probably that the two Shinigami will be defeated. Don't tell me, Shinigami is really good at picking opponents. Yami scratched his head. If I could pick my opponents, I wouldn't be defeated by Zaraki Kenpachi and Byakuya Kuchiki. Stop talking. You really dare to use the word joint forces. Ruby curled her lips. Invisible Empire. What, Liji, were you really defeated by those two useless guys? Gerald swallowed involuntarily. Who could have imagined such a result? The captain of the guards, the power of penetrating all things given by Yuhabach, and a strong person ranked at least in the top 5, was unexpectedly defeated by Kyōraku Shunsui, who was ranked 16th, and the vice-captain Nanao who was not on the list. Tell it. Not embarrassing enough. The 8-mirror sword is real. Lille Barro was a little panicked now, knowing that he was cut in half, he was convinced of the power of the god Kenpachi mirror sword. Panita, in the future battle, I will switch opponents with you. You go to fight Kyōraku Shunsui, and I will deal with Kurotsuchi Mayuri. Looking at Panita. Panita nodded slightly and agreed. Oh, it's so embarrassing. Our cards have been defeated by Shinigami one after another. Your Majesty will not spare you. Bambietta shook his head helplessly. On the throne. Can't even Lijibalo avoid the divine sword. Yuhabach's eyes were slightly shocked. My current ability can be described as a god, so will the 8-mirror sword have any effect on me? He sneered. Even if that broken sword is really useful, I have omniscience and omnipotence and can change the future. Seraiti. You win, Nanao-chan. Kyōraku Shunsui looked at Nanao after taking a long breath as if he had put down a burden on his shoulders. With that sword strike, no one can guarantee whether it will cause any harm to Lille Barro. If it doesn't work, then they will die. But the result is good, Lille Barro has lost the ability to resist. Yes, Captain. Nanao looked at each other and smiled. Carrying the burden of mother and captain, she will not fail and cannot fail. Oh my, Captain Kyōband, it would be great if you took out this divine sword earlier. Kurotsuchi Mayuri complained, and she wouldn't have almost died. Captain Nirvana, what do you know? Captain Kyōband has an oath. If he takes out this sword to deal with Lille Barro, he will break his oath. Even if he dies, Captain Kyōband will not do this. Kashiwamura Sajin, I know what Kyōraku Shunsui is like. If it weren't for Nanao's request, he would never let Nanao bear the curse. Yeah, maybe I will take it out in advance during the real battle in the future. Kyōraku Shunsui waved his hand. Captain, since everyone already knows the matter, you should hand over the divine sword to me, right? Nanao suddenly said. No, the enemy hasn't appeared yet. Kyōraku Shunsui pulled out the Zanpakuto crazy bone and handed it to Nanao. Here, if you really want Zanpakuto, I'll let you use the crazy bone first. Nanao rolled her eyes at him. If you don't want to give it, don't give it. What happened? Return to the video screen. After delivering a full blow, Nanao's legs became weak for a while. Fortunately, Kyōraku Shunsui held her in time to prevent her from falling. Well done, Nanao-chan. Team leader. Nanao stared at Kyōraku Shunsui, a little at a loss. Okay, let's go catch up with everyone. Kyōraku Shunsui turned around and was about to leave, but his legs weakened and he fell to the ground. It's really embarrassing. He stared at the sky. Let's take a short rest and then chase them. 11. What they didn't know was that although Rijibalo disappeared from the Soul King's palace, he fell to the Seraiti below. The arrow feathers directly pierced through the soul shielding membrane and were fired toward the ground crazily. Wow, what is this? Is something falling from the sky? The Shinigami in Seraiti panicked, and they didn't know what was happening. Request flowers 0. Yeah, what did these people do? Aizen, who was sitting on the chair, felt the change and complained. Suddenly, the team members noticed something strange. The arrow rain disappeared, and at the same time, something seemed to appear at the explosion point. Hey, look at that. Huh, what is that? It seems like something fell down. The team members did not dare to move forward and whispered to the side. Soon, something like a light snake snaked out. Is it a snake? No, it's Kun. The team members discovered that the snake-like thing was actually the monster's neck, and its complete shape looked like a chicken. Nani, is this guy not dead yet? Kyōraku Shunsui felt outside the video. Incredible, that was a blow from the divine sword, cut in half and still not dead. This vitality is so tenacious. But this look seems to have changed, compared to before. Omaeda said and couldn't help laughing. It has completely turned into a long-necked chicken. Is this a regression? Jashiro also smiled. Even the wings disappeared, this time he really turned into a pheasant. Even if he is not dead, his ability should be greatly weakened. That guy Aizen actually felt this change. Toshirō frowned. At this time, Aizen seemed still in Seraiti. He did not follow Kyōraku Shunsui to the Spirit King Palace. It seems that after Kyōraku Shunsui released him, he really didn't choose to help. Aizen is so powerful, he must be able to feel it. If he is sensible, he will use his own power to kill Lille Barro. Kashiwamura Sajin's eyes were fierce, which can be regarded as a reason. Soul Society contributes. It hurts like hell. Lille Barro complained after falling. He turned his eyes and found that the halo above his head had disappeared. Falling from the sky and losing my halo is simply saying that I have sinned a lot. Isn't it? Thinking about it, anger arose in his heart. Stretching out the bird's head, it continued to rotate like a rope, and countless spirit bullets were fired from the head. Unforgivable. Even if you die, I will not forgive you. The aura disappears, but even if you lose the power of God, it is enough. I will trample this soul society you protect into mud. Explosions continued to occur, and at the same time, Lijibalo also split into several giant bird monsters of the same form. The monster birds spit out huge spiritual seeds from their mouths and launched them. What the hell is this? The Shinigami were panicked. But suddenly, a sudden slash cut a bird in half. Chirp chirp chirp. Kill, be killed, Lijibaro roared. It's such a chirping bird. It's such a chirping bird. A deep voice came from the ruins in the distance. A Shinigami wearing a Death Tyrant outfit, with the right chest connected to a bracket, suddenly appeared. It's so noisy that it's even reaching the grave. Holding a folding knife Wabisuk, I am Kira Iziru, remember? Kira, that's Kira. Hinamori's eyes suddenly lit up outside the video, then he looked at Kira and said excitedly, Kira, you were not killed by Busby. It's great that you were not killed by Busby. Got it. As she spoke, tears slowly filled her eyes. I thought that Kira was killed when the Quincy first attacked Soul Society, but he actually appeared in the future battle. Although his body is not complete, he still has the power to kill the split body of Lille Barro with one knife, which shows that he still has the ability to fight. He has not become a useless person. I can't believe it's a miracle that Vice Captain Kira survived such an injury. Omaeda's eyes widened in disbelief. Kira glanced at him. You don't wish me well at all. I need to thank Captain Nirvana. He turned his gaze to Kurotsuchi Mayuri, showing a sincere expression. I must have been helped by Captain Nirvana when I looked like this, otherwise I might have died long ago. Oh my, why are you so polite? Kurotsuchi Mayuri smiled coldly. You look like this, it's your destiny to survive. Invisible Empire. It's so ugly, Liji. Gerald shook his head. The power of God has been defeated, and if I remember correctly, the person who attacked you was killed by Ba Zibi. The vice captain with a broken chest and arms, right? Although he didn't remember which division he was in, he was bullied by the vice captain because he lost face. A tiger falls in Pyongyang and is bullied by a dog, but what can a mere deputy captain do to me? Even without the power of God, I can still kill him. Return to the video screen. Who are you? Several pairs of bird eyes stared at Kira and asked. Dead. Kira's face was pale, and with the support on his body, he seemed to be just like what he said, a dead man crawling out of the grave. Several more slashes were struck, and the split bodies were knocked down one after another. Really, it's not bad to wake up, but the scene in front of me is a bit horrible, it's full of holes. Can a person like me survive to protect Soul Society? Quote. It's really unknown. 10. Chapter 156, Number 15. V-shaped imagination, the most conceited person. Open black lens bracket Kyōraku Shunsui's Riot Barro. Victory, close black lens bracket. The most important battle, the results are also displayed. At this point in the video, Kyōraku Shunsui's inventory ends. He and Aizen Nanao worked together to use the God Kenpachi mirror sword to beat Ritsubaro into a split body. Even the power of God disappeared. It was a great victory. Saraiti. Although I didn't completely kill Ritsubaro, I tried my best. Kyōraku Shunsui sighed and looked at Aizen Nanao. If it weren't for the power of the 8-mirror sword, how could he possibly defeat Lee Jae-Beluo? Among them, Nanao takes a lot of credit. Captain Kyōraku, you really need to thank Vice Captain Aizen. Omeda turned to Kyōraku Shunsui. Aizen Nanao appeared and raised the curse of the Aizen family, which can be regarded as freeing Kyōraku Shunsui from the oath that made him burdened with a heavy burden. But the two of them can be regarded as redeeming each other. As Rijabalo the most difficult enemy besides Yuhabach. At this time, Tōshirō frowned, a little worried whether there would be similar enemies among the Quincy. Kyōraku Shunsui was seriously injured in the battle, and it was unrealistic to continue fighting. On the other side, Kurotsuchi Mayuri also lost her fighting ability due to the battle with Panita, and reluctantly entered the protective bottle to save her life. Not to mention Zaraki Kenpachi, one of his arms was broken directly. Although his legs were not broken, it seemed that he could not walk normally. At present, it is unclear whether Zaraki Kenpachi's subsequent battle with Gerard and the start of Bankai happened before or after this battle, but there is no doubt that Zaraki Kenpachi has already demonstrated his fighting experience at this time. Kurotsuchi Mayuri ranked 17th, Kyōraku Shunsui ranked 16th, and Zaraki Kenpachi have not yet announced their rankings, but everyone knows that Zaraki Kenpachi is stronger than the two. We lost 3 admirals all at once, and the situation is not optimistic. It's hard to say. Although Rijabalo claims that he is the highest masterpiece of Yuhabach, Quincy are very conceited, right? Sui Feng shook his head, disagreeing with Tōshirō's view. Every Quincy is like a zealot who is the only one in the world. What Rijabalo said is exactly the character of a Quincy. Of course, it's just the Quincy of the Invisible Empire. It stands to reason that there are 26 of the holy texts of Yuhabach. We only have a few captains. In terms of number, the number has been reduced by half. Kurotsuchi Mayuri shook his head. If you can fight 2 of them one by one, then pretend I didn't say it, but to deal with one Gerard, it will consume the combat power of 3 captains. If the war is really launched, then our Soul Society will be defeated. Very thorough. There is no way, but since Rijabalo has the power of God, it means that there cannot be another person with his ability. Basically, he is one of the strongest Quincy. Rangaku is quite satisfied lightness cannot be as cheap as the power of God. Then there's nothing to be afraid of. As long as I recover from my injuries in the protective bottle, it won't be a problem to join the war again. Zaraki Kenpachi had a look of disdain on his face. There were only a few Quincy with high combat power, and the rest were rotten fish. Kenpachi didn't take them seriously at all. Captain Zaraki, although my protective bottle has some recovery and healing effects, your injury will not heal so quickly. Kurotsuchi Mayuri looked at Zaraki Kenpachi, even she had to go back to Saraiti and get a new one. Body. Not to mention, Zaraki Kenpachi is not a human being. Captain Nirvana, have you forgotten Captain Zaraki's own resilience? Shuhei took over. To others, these injuries may be injuries that will ruin Shinigami's career, but to Zaraki Kenpachi, they are just skin trauma. Kurotsuchi Mayuri nodded. That's true, but it's better not to be so impulsive. Remember, Zaraki, you, Captain Unohana, paid for it with your life. Zaraki Kenpachi glanced at Unohana Retsu and sneered, my participation in the battle is to protect Soul Society in a different direction. Isn't this what Captain Unohana wants to see? Kurotsuchi Mayuri. Shout. Kurotsuchi Mayuri waved his hand disapprovingly, you can do whatever you want, but the prerequisite is that you don't die in my protective bottle. Invisible Empire. I shouldn't be killed by Kira, right? Li Jibaluo's face no longer had the arrogance before, and was even a little panicked. He knew that he had the ability to split his body, but he had never seen a split body at the cost of losing the power of God. Even if he doesn't have the power of God, that guy shouldn't be my opponent, right? That's hard to say, Li Jia. Bambietta looked at Li Jibaluo with a smile on her lips, as if she was gloating about others' misfortune. Rijibalo represented the Quincy's highest combat power, but in the end, he was bullied by the vice captain. It's embarrassing, let's not talk about it. It's hard to say whether he's dead or not. Li Jia won't be killed by that vice captain, right? Busby smiled faintly. If he ends here, doesn't it mean that he is not as good as himself? Stop guessing. Didn't you hear that Shinigami said he was a dead person? I will help him and make him truly a dead person. Li Jibaluo twitched the corner of his mouth and said angrily. But this time, the combat strength gold list has been slowly launched. The densely packed names above are all people who have been on the list before. Kyōraku Shunsui is ranked above Kurotsuchi Mayuri. As the light flashing from the gold list disappears, the list slowly closes. The name of the next person has become a doubt in everyone's mind. This world. The next one is ranked 15th. This ranking means that this person's power is very different from ordinary people. Kurosaki Ichigo frowned tightly. It's not that he didn't think that he had the combination of 3 powers in his body. It's normal to be on the combat power gold list, and ranking in the top 20 seems to be more than enough. Logically speaking, the 15th place is exactly in line with his ranking. Niutouxu is the most powerful form that Ichigo has seen so far. If he were to rank only according to the ranking of Zubai Niutouxu, he would be ranked at most 20th. It is simply unrealistic to want to be ranked ahead of Kurotsuchi Mayuri and Kyōraku Shunsui. But combined with Shinigami and Quincy, it seems reasonable. Kurosaki Ichigo, it's your turn, right? Renji looked at Kurosaki Ichigo, the expression on his face was very subtle, it was hard to tell whether he was envious or happy for him. I should be a little taller, right? Kurosaki Ichigo scratched the back of his head and glanced upward. Kurosaki-san, probably around 15th place. Inoue Orihime agreed with Renji's ranking. It's not that she doesn't believe in Kurosaki Ichigo's strength, it's because there are too many monsters among the Quincy. Kurosaki Ichigo shows strong suppressive power except for the form of the Minotaur Hollow, and has no other abilities. Inoue Orihime feels that 15th place is exactly where Kurosaki Ichigo ranks. Or, where's Uryu? At this time, Sato looked at Ishida Uryu. Ishida Uryu has never appeared on the list, and because his performance in the video has always been very hip and inconspicuous. So everyone ignored him. Ishida, can you be ranked 15? Don't be kidding me. It's not certain whether you will be on the list. Kurosaki Ichigo shook his head. Although the video was exposed at that time, Ishida Uryu joined the Invisible Empire, but this does not mean that he has strong abilities. He just wanted revenge, so it was not incomprehensible for him to submit to Yuhabach's command. Besides, Ishida Uryu is not a pure-blood Quincy. His mother, Katagira, is a half-blood Quincy, even though Ishida Ryujin is a pure-blood one. But a positive is a negative, and perhaps Yuhabach took a fancy to him. Ishida Uryu, a half-blood Quincy, had not died under the Holy Spirit at that time, so he valued him so much. What do you know? Ishida Uryu stroked the frame of his glasses and looked at Kurosaki Ichigo as if he were a fool. If my ability has not improved, how could I join Yuhabach's legion? As he spoke, a flash of light flashed in his eyes, and he continued, I will not do anything to die in vain. Now that Uryu has joined Yuhabach, maybe he will be given a new holy writing ability by Yuhabach. Inoue Orihime's eyes lit up. This possibility is extremely high. As a person of Yuhabach, you will definitely be given some kind of ability. Yes, I have a hunch that if Yuhabach is killed in the future, it must be because of me. Ishida Uryu narrowed his eyes slightly, seeming to predict the future. Kurosaki Ichigo shouted. I hope so. Saraiti. Captain Kyoband, Captain Nirvana, and Captain Unohana have all appeared on the list one after another. Among our Shinigami, only Captain Zaraki and the Chief Captain are not on the list, right? Shu Bing glanced around, confirmed the name, and said decisively. Although there are also captains ranked lower on the list, such as Byakuya Kuchiki and Tōshirō, these rankings are not important at all. Only those within 20 or 15 can be said to be strong with overwhelming power. In Shinigami, there are no more candidates. Yes, the only ones we can place our hopes on are Captain Zaraki and the Chief Captain. Rangaku looked a little disappointed. There is no doubt that Quincy such as Yasukin and Panita must be on the previous list. The Shinigami, on the other hand, have run out of ammunition and food. Anyway, the 15th place is definitely not our captain, he can definitely be ranked higher. Madarame Makaku folded his arms and said firmly. Well, Aiken is indeed more than 15th, Kusajishi Yakiru also said. Kashiwamura Sajin sighed, Arankar, headed by Hawako Mundo Aizen, has no strong ones for a long time. If nothing else, the 15th one will be the Quincy. Although everyone was unwilling to accept it, their silence also showed that they recognized the 15 as Quincy. Zai Palace. Oh, it's so boring. Our highest combat power has barely entered the 30 ranks. There are probably many Quincy who have entered the 10 ranks. Yami waved his hand, feeling very uncomfortable. Compared to Saraites Shinigami, there is also the Quincy of the Invisible Empire. They Espada seem to be the most rubbish faction. From this point of view, even the king of Hueco Mundo has no chance of standing out. There is no way. Who can make the power given to us by Aizen not be as strong as the power given to the Quincy by Yuhabach? Grimmjow curled his lips, folded his arms, and said with a dissatisfied tone. Grimmjow, are you too greedy? The power given to us by Master Aizen is already great enough, but you still think it is too weak. Zamari slammed the table angrily, stood up suddenly, and stared at Grimmjow with anger in his eyes. HMPH, you are already very weak, haven't you seen how strong Aizen is? He only gave us this. Grimmjow shook his head. With his own strength, he can break the seal of Wujianzhong, and his combat power list is also in the top 3, but his subordinates turned out to be such rubbish. Not even one entered the top 20. Look at Yuhabach's men, they actually have the power of God. Compare it and you will know what the gap is. Invisible Empire. If it's 15th, then it's our team member, right? Menina smiled sweetly. Giselle and Little Bumby are both on the list, maybe I will be next. That's too much, Little Minnie. Giselle shook her head. How many places are we ranked? More than 40. If you were on the list, you should not be far behind us. You are already ranked 10th. There are 5 people, and now it's you, it's too whimsical. Furthermore, Menina's holy writing ability is power, an ordinary ability to increase her own power. To say she is on the list is to praise her. Shout, I was still looking forward to being on the list. You are already ranked in the 40s, and there is no room for improvement. Menina said with a smile. However, at this time, the 5th guest had already appeared on the screen. Number 15 on the combat power list, Gremmy Thoumeaux. Name, Gremmy Thoumeaux. Power, Invisible Empire. Identity, Quincy. Ability, Holy Text V, Visionary. X, 95, 50, 95, Speed, 95, 96, Vitality, 95, Reiatsu, 96. Combat Strength, 1,600,000. Saraiti, is it really a Quincy? I guessed it right. Kashiwamura Sajin frowned, and it was a brand new name, not Panita Gerald and others. Visionary, Gremmy Thoumeaux, what abilities does this guy have? Sui Feng looked at Gremmy Thoumeaux's attribute panel and suddenly felt very confused. Visionary, the description of this ability seems clear, but also very vague. Could it be that he can create illusions to attack weapons? Rangaku said his guess. Since his ability is that of a visionary, he should use the ability of illusion as an attack method to create various weapons. This is probably the most basic method. Quote. Tōshirō nodded. There must be abilities related to this, but is it too outrageous to be able to just create weapons through illusions? Isn't it outrageous that it can be used as a lethal weapon just by imagining it? It's certainly not based on imagination. Kurotsuchi Mayuri also disagrees with this ability. Even scientists cannot accept this ability, but he is looking forward to seeing what is so special about so-called visionaries. This world, imaginary, does it depend on imagination as a fighting ability? 2.9. Kurosaki Ichigo was curious. For example, if you imagine now that you pour me a glass of water, will you be forced by your ability to pour the water? Renji looked at Ichigo and made a guess. That's not the case. Ichigo frowned. If his wish came true, wouldn't he be invincible if he died with just one hand? Even so, as his opponent, it is quite unlucky. Ishida Uryu shook his head slightly. Invisible Empire. Is it Gremmy? I thought you could be ranked higher. Lichibero looked at Gremmy Thoumeaux with some surprise, except for the personal guards. The people he is most optimistic about are Gremmy Thoumeaux and Lloyd, as well as Nyunsou Waso, who has 2 tongues and Yuhabach often takes them with him. However, Nyunsou Waso's ranking is not high, and Lloyd can make sense. The strongest Gremmy is only ranked 15th. Oh my, why is the strongest imagination only in the 15th place? Gremmy narrowed his eyes with disdain. He has a very arrogant character, even a little conceited. He believes that imagination is the most powerful ability in the world, and even considers himself the strongest member of the Knights of the Star Cross. Although the other members are also very conceited, they are still inferior to Gremmy. The strongest imagination. Gremmy, you are too arrogant. Gerald smiled scornfully. He knew that Gremmy was arrogant, but he didn't expect it to be so arrogant. Of course, he also knows that Gremmy's fighting method has always been to use imagination to create things. There is no need to create spirit weapons through spirit sun clustering, and he has never even used divine destruction. Blood armor, Quincy characters and badges are common skills and props for Quincy. Among the many Knights of the Star Cross, he is considered a unique one. There is nothing good to say to losers. Gremmy shook his head, with a smile on his lips. I wonder which little unlucky guy will become my opponent. Chapter 157, Invisible Man. The calf protecting Zaraki is furious. Please subscribe. Gremmy, your data panel is not as luxurious as Kyōraku Shunsui's, but your combat power exceeds his 100,000. Bambietta felt incredible. Is this a bug? Kyōraku Shunsui's intelligence is as high as 97, and the average score on the overall panel is higher than Gremmy's, but his combat power is higher. Bumby, haven't you discovered that combat effectiveness and strength are not only related to the numerical value on the panel? Gremmy said seriously. Just like high intelligence, it is indeed related to some strategies. Attack power is also a representative of lethality, but the ability and characteristics of the person involved are also crucial in determining combat effectiveness. His average value is lower than Kyōraku Shunsui, but his ranking and combat power are ahead of him, which proves this. Of course, the data only differs slightly, otherwise if there is too much difference, it will be regarded as a bug. However, at this time, the picture was already playing on the big screen. In a corner room, Kotetsu Aizen is treating a patient in a hospital bed. Taking a closer look, the patients were none other than Odoribashi Rojiro and Kensai, who had been seriously injured by Masuko before. Although the injury was serious, thanks to the treatment of Kotetsu Aizen, there was hope of survival. Little tiger. Suddenly, a childish voice came in from outside the house. Kotetsu Aizen was startled for a moment and turned to look. Kusajishi Yakiru, the pink-haired deputy captain of the 11th Loli Squadron, was running towards her with a delighted smile on his face. I found a new bedding I could use. Yakiru held the quilt, ran to the hospital bed, covered Rojiro and Kensai, and said excitedly, "Oh, those Quincy quilts are so useful." "Shish, it's too loud, Vice Captain Kuolu." Kotetsu Aizen shushed and broke into a nervous sweat when he saw Yakiru's careless appearance. Their location is still in the real-world city, which is regarded as the territory of the Quincy. Not to mention disturbing the patient, if it attracts the attention of the Quincy, it will be terrible. But Kotetsu Aizen still expressed his gratitude and said with a guilty tone, "I'm very sorry, please do such a dangerous thing. Nowhere. Aegean won't be able to come back for a while, I'm very free anyway." When Kusajishi Yakiru 14 spoke, he always showed a childlike smile, giving people a very warm feeling. Kotetsu Aizen was silent when she heard Kenpachi's name. She thought of her captain, Hana Retsu. Seeing this, Yachinryu immediately changed the topic and said with a dance, "Also, if you want to look for bedding and medicine, you only need to make a surprise attack and knock down one of them, and then run away quickly. There is no danger at all." "Huh, Vice Captain Kusuka, is your way of collecting supplies really good?" Kotetsu Aizen outside the video twitched his lips. Doing this would make too much noise. Is it true that no Quincy discovered her? This is the easiest way. Otherwise, if you are sneaky and accidentally touch something and make a sound, you will be easily discovered. Yachi showed a smile and looked at Kotetsu Aizen. It is better to kill the enemy directly and take the run away as soon as you finish your things. Kotetsu Aizen, as expected of the vice captain of the 11th Division. Kurotsuchi Mayuri sneered and said with originality, "I have never seen the vice captain Kusuka fight with his true ability. With me here, do you still need Yachinryu to fight?" Zaraki Kenpachi glared at Kurotsuchi Mayuri. As long as he stood, Zaraki Kenpachi would never let Kusajishi Yakiru participate in the battle. "Isn't it because you are not around?" Kurotsuchi Mayuri smiled. Visored. "Is it Kotetsu Aizen who is treating us?" Lujiro frowned, then lifted his hair and said with an indifferent expression, "If I had changed my opponent in that battle, maybe I would have won." Masuko pierced his eardrum and then recovered. "It is simply outrageous." Love Akawa sneered. "Roz, if it were another Quincy, I guess if you just tell me where you are, Kotetsu Aizen won't have a chance to save you. You should still care about whether you will be rescued and regain your normal abilities." Hachigan interrupted Rojiro's pretense. If there is a reference for the appearance of being penetrated through the body, Kira Izuru would be the best choice. They all saw Kira's appearance. Although she was still alive, her chest was not supported by a brace. Rojiro waved his hand. "It's just a fatal injury, but I believe in Kotetsu Aizen's medical skills." "Right, Kensai." Return to the video screen. Kotetsu Aizen couldn't help but swallow as he listened to Yakiru's description of the process of collecting supplies. For such a random collection method, fortunately, no enemy has discovered this place yet. "Fortunately, we haven't been discovered so far. Is that what you think?" Suddenly, an old but sharp voice came from behind, like a cold knife stabbing Kotetsu Aizen, making his heart tighten. She immediately turned around, looking for the unknown person. But the room was empty, there was no sound from anyone else at all. Could it be a hallucination? No, Kotetsu Aizen actually heard a strange sound. Here it is. However, the next second, an old man with a pink afro wrapped his arms around Kotetsu Aizen's neck and clung to him. Chichi, you can't see me." The old man licked his tongue, revealing 2 rows of yellow teeth with wide gaps between them, which was quite disgusting. Even when the sound came again, Kotetsu Aizen didn't see anyone. "Saraiti. Is that disgusting pink-haired old man Gremmy Thoumeaux? He looks so disgusting." Rangaku curled his lips. This shape and appearance were so simple and disgusting. Pink hair is suitable for a little Lolita like Vice Captain Kusuka. Why does such an old guy have such a hair color? It's outrageous. Kyōraku Shunsui's face twitched, unable to understand. Is this the visionary's unique understanding of modeling? Oops, I want to change my hair color. Yachinli grabbed a handful of hair and glanced sideways, looking a little depressed. She didn't want to have a hair color conflict with such a disgusting old man. Zaraki Kenpachi stroked Yakiru's head and smiled evilly. Humph, kill him and you will be unique. 11. However, this Gremmy seems to be in an invisible state. Vice Captain Kotetsu didn't notice him at all. Kira frowned. It would be a big mistake to fight someone who can hide his identity. Disadvantages. Could it be that Gremmy imagined that he was invisible, so he became invisible? Yumashika was very curious. Madarame Makaku nodded in agreement. In this case, how should our vice captain fight? Invisible Empire. Gremmy, you are really interesting, you actually let Gnarl fight. Mass Killer Belsi looked at Gremmy, shook his head and said. Gunner is a life form imagined by Gremmy. He is a strange old man with unusually abrupt eyes and hexagonal framed glasses. Although he was a figment of Gremmy's imagination, all members of the Star-Crossed Knights knew about Gurnar. Even when he was not imprisoned, the Gremmites could imagine Gurnar and play pranks on other members. There's no need to ask. Gremmy must have wanted to use his imagination to threaten Shinigami first. There is no need for him to personally fight against enemies that Gurnar can deal with. Lichibero responded to Bell's question. Replied. Don't you think it's fun to hide in the dark and tease your enemies without being discovered? Gremmy narrowed his eyes slightly and licked his lips with his tongue, looking a little sinister. Well, I agree with Gremmy. Giselle nodded slightly, he agreed with this view. Although he didn't have any good impression of Gremmy, or in other words, none of the Quincy present had the friendship of a teammate towards Gremmy, and their feelings towards Gremmy were more of fear and disgust. However, they all know in their hearts that the blonde boy sitting on the chair in the conference room is not actually Gremmy's body. Like Gunner, he is an imaginary body. Its body is a brain sealed in a container. It's just that Gremmy has always been shown in the form of a blonde boy, so he subconsciously regards him as his original body. Does anyone still agree with this kind of person? Peppa glanced at Giselle and Gremmy with disgust. He hated both of them. If he had to pick one person he hated more, it would have to be Gremmy. How could your majesty release such a person? This kind of monster should be locked up in prison for the rest of his life. He thought in his heart, but did not dare to say it. If he told it, he might suffer disaster. Before the appearance of the Combat Power Gold List, Gremmy had been imprisoned. For special reasons, all members of the Star-Crossed Knights were summoned to the conference room, otherwise Gremmy would still be in prison. Gremmy glanced at Pepe with a slightly perverted look, but didn't say much. He was taking stock of himself, but he didn't want to see blood. Return to the video screen. Hey. As soon as Gunner said the words that he could not see him, a small but powerful fist hit him in the face. His entire face was distorted by the beating, and fresh blood spurted out of his mouth. Then Kusajishi Yakiru landed lightly and was a little curious. Huh. Strange, that punch just now clearly hit, but, what did I hit? She only felt as if she had touched something, and that punch was also thrown out subconsciously. Nothing happened, but the next second, a fist came out of thin air and hit Yachinliu in the face. Gunner counterattacked, and Yachinliu was instantly knocked to the ground, also bleeding. Vice Captain Kusuka, Kotetsu Aizen saw Yakiru injured and immediately ran to her to check the situation. But suddenly, that disgusting voice sounded again. Chichi, Chichi. You look like you want to hit me, don't you? You can't do it, you absolutely can't do that kind of thing. Gunner smiled sinisterly. I am, the unidentifiable assassin. Gunner Lee of Extinction Point. My existence will completely disappear from your sight and consciousness. I was shocked. I thought the kid could see me, but it turned out to be a punch. I was really lucky. Gremmy breathed a sigh of relief. When Yachinliu first punched decisively, he was really nervous. Now it seems that I am worrying too much. Gremmy, you shouldn't have any pressure to deal with these two weak vice captains Shinigami, right? Pepe chuckled. The white-haired one seems to be the vice captain of the support team, and the other one is a child. Like this people, I won't treat you as an opponent at all. Of course he was lying. He was eager to find a weak opponent. He just wanted to make Gremmy unable to step down. What's the point? Shinigami is Shinigami. We are Quincy. Pepe, do you want to side with Shinigami? Gremmy understood Peep's meaning and asked. Of course not. Pepe panicked and faltered. I think that if you leave this kind of opponent to someone like Giselle, you should deal with the captain-level Shinigami. Quote. Before Gremmy could speak, Giselle yelled angrily, Pepe. Who are you looking down on? You can't even defeat Quan Shi Lu Cha, so you were wrong by Lily. Hearing this, Li Tuoduo grinned, her eyes were already fixed on Pepe, and she licked her lips intentionally. Pepe shivered when she saw this and quickly shut up. Saraiti. No, this guy said his name is Gunner Lee, isn't he Gremmy Thoumeaux? Tōshirō was very curious. There should be no one who pronounces his name wrong. Yes, could it be that this guy was imagined by Gremmy? Shu Bing frowned and nodded. I don't know what his real body looks like, but his thoughts are really disgusting, and he actually embodies such a bad habit. Whoever he is, damn him, he dares to beat Yakiru. Seeing Yakiru being beaten until he bled, Zaraki Kenpachi became furious in an instant, with such an angry expression that he could almost eat Gunner. There's nothing we can do, Captain Zaraki. If this old man doesn't show up, we will continue to be injured for no reason. Kotetsu Aizen frowned. He was not worried about his own safety. There were injured people in the room. If they were not treated in time, they would be injured. Likely to cause death. Kurotsuchi Mayuri smiled slightly. Vice Captain Kotetsu, don't you even have a way to deal with invisible enemies? Kotetsu Aizen heard what he said, and after thinking for a moment, he was shocked, and seemed to understand what Kurotsuchi Mayuri meant. Captain Nirvana means 000, materialization. Even if Gremmy is invisible, he has a state, but he also has an entity. As long as he uses some means to make the entity appear, he can be found. Yakiru was a little confused, scratching his head and looking at Kotetsu Aizen, not understanding what she meant. To put it simply, you can use something like dust or feathers to put traces on Gremmy's body, and you can accurately find his location. Jashiro smiled slightly and clicked directly. Bright. Bingo. Kurotsuchi Mayuri snapped her fingers. The betting you just picked up can be put to use. Rojiro and Kenichi. Thank you so much, Kurotsuchi Mayuri. Visored. It's so abominable that you are using such a despicable trick as invisibility. Kotetsu Aizen and Kusajishi Yakiru, you must resist. Rojiro was a little panicked at this time. If he couldn't hold on, he would have to answer for it. Ha ha ha. Ross, are you anxious now? Love Aikawa leaned close to Lujiro's ear and said coquettishly. Roll. Return to the video screen. Kotetsu Aizen was frightened by the sound coming out of thin air, but he didn't have time to think about it. It was important to check Yakiru's injuries first. Vice Captain Kaolu, what's wrong with you? Is your nose bleeding? Did you get hit somewhere? She was a little at a loss. I don't know. Bachinliu was also confused. That's right, don't you understand? Gunner was very proud. He had known it would be like this for a long time and showed his true form directly. After hearing the sound again, Kotetsu Aizen immediately turned her head to look. The sudden appearance of a person made her look pale, and said in a trembling voice, are you a member of the Knights of the Star Cross? ? Seeing that outfit, she deduced Gernar's identity. Yes. Do you know how many times I am going to say, hello, first time meeting, to you? Gunner did not rush to take action and introduced again in front of the two people. I am Gunner Lee of the Knights of the Star Cross v. Exhaustion Point. ... You can't see my existence, including feelings and memories. With that said, he disappeared into the darkness again. Suddenly, Yakiru flew over and hit Gunner on the bridge of his nose with his fist. This time, blood spurted from his nose. Huh, that's weird, I thought I was hit. Yachinliu was a little curious, why did he feel the touch? That's right. My power has 3 modes. Gunner only showed his glasses frame and 2 eyes and introduced. Mode 1 is the disappearance of the figure, Mode 2 is the disappearance of the existence, and now it is the Mode 2. When I let my presence disappear, my existence also disappears. The vision captured the afterimage of my figure, leaving only the illusion of hit, and then it returned from Mode 2 to Mode 1. He can then attack while keeping his figure disappearing. At this time, an inexplicable fist suddenly hit Bachinliu's tender face. Kotetsu Aizen was completely confused and shouted anxiously, Vice Captain Kusuka, why are you suddenly injured? Yachinliu noticed it and punched again. Bam. Chapter 158, Shikai. The 3-step sword beast, the cute girl also has great power. Please subscribe. Yakiru punched violently, but the punch hit the partition, and the wooden box was shattered, but Gunner was still uninjured. I can switch back and forth between Mode 1 and Mode 2 in an instant. Even if I judge my position based on the direction of the attack and counterattack instantly, my existence has already disappeared from there. Gunner explained that the switching back and forth completely confused Yachinliu. Then, he started to make crazy sneak attacks, and there were more and more wounds on Yachinliu's body. It's a completely one-sided invincible game. It's fun, really fun. The murderous feeling made Gunner feel very happy. Can you switch back and forth between the 2 modes? Isn't this invincible? Tōshirō outside the video frowned tightly. The first mode is that the figure disappears, that is, becomes invisible. Yachinliu cannot touch his position. The second mode is the direct disappearance of existence. In other words, the entire person disappears from the world. Even if someone attacks Gernar, he can perfectly avoid the attack by entering Mode 2 in an instant. The most outrageous thing is that he can switch between the 2 modes at will. After the opponent's attack fails, he can switch to the invisible Mode 1, but have a physical form, and then carry out unsolvable attacks. Tōshirō didn't know how to deal with such an opponent. The ability is so weird. Although it is an attack method of punching and kicking, this kind of near-instant invincibility cannot be captured at all. Rangaku couldn't help but worry about Yakiru and Kotetsu Aizen. The abilities of the 2 of them, against such an opponent, may lead to unexpected events. Oh, it's quite tricky. Kurotsuchi Mayuri, who is used to seeing all kinds of strange abilities, also shook her head. At present, he really can't think of an effective way to deal with Gunner. Although that guy can switch between the 2 modes, there is definitely a gap at the moment of switching. Shu Bing's eyes flashed. If he could capture the opponent at that moment, then this ability would be self-defeating. But it is not an easy thing to capture this moment. And the other party is still invisible, making it even more difficult. Among the captains present, the higher-ranking ones may be able to catch Reiatsu's movements through the subtle changes, but most of the Shinigami cannot see through it. This is too difficult for me. Kotetsu Aizen said sadly. It's not that she is belittling herself. She is not even strong enough to deal with Gurnal, and she can't even defeat 8,000 Ryu. I can still try. At this time, Bachanliu clenched his little hands and said very firmly. Zai Palace. No, I have such a strange ability. I thought being invisible was enough pervert, but I can actually disappear from the world. Yami rolled up his sleeves, sweating profusely. Is this the terrifying thing about Quincy? The opponent being too weak is also a factor. If it were the captain, there might be a solution. Grimjow sneered. Isn't it just an invisibility and disappearing existence? If he confronts me, I will definitely make him disappear into ashes. At this time, Baragan, who was sitting on his seat, crossed his legs and said, no matter how strong the Quincy is, as long as he dares to get close to me, I can age him. Baragan, my Reiatsu is much higher than you, I'm afraid your ability is useless. Harabel gave Baragan a warning look. Baragan didn't look at Harabel, whether it's useful or not, you can only know if you practice it. Return to the video screen. Gunnar was still excited about hiding in the dark and attacking, but suddenly, Yachinliu swung another punch and accurately hit him on the bridge of the nose. Ah, the reaction speed has improved rapidly. Gunnar hadn't had time to switch to mode 2, but he didn't take the damage from his fist seriously at all. In that case, let me show you the third mode. Suddenly, Gunnar's body seemed to turn into flames, and his body was no longer in its normal form. It was like smoke that dispersed as soon as it was blown. Mode 3 is to make my existence disappear from your consciousness. To put it simply, it is to forget my existence. So, once again, let's start with the first meeting. With that said, Gunnar's body continued to dissipate. Yachinliu was still punching, but still hitting nothing. Huh, it disappeared. I thought I was hit. She looked at the retracted fist, very curious. However, on the other side, a scratch appeared on Gunnar's old skin. Who is this little girl? Her judgment just now was not a reaction, but a reflexive attack on me. She actually attacked someone for the first time. It's so abnormal, Gunnar complained as he hid aside. Wait a minute, Vice Captain Kusuka, what are you doing? Seeing Yakiru throwing his fists randomly, Kotetsu Aizen quickly yelled at him. You can't just hit someone based on your intuition. You haven't figured out whether the other person is an enemy. It would be too rude to suddenly attack someone who is a friend. That's right, it's so devoid of common sense. Gunnar echoed in a low voice. Have you simply forgotten the existence of Gunnar? Outside the video, Sajin Kashiwamura's eyes widened and he felt in disbelief. This is completely the ability to change the opponent's mental power. Not only could he not remember everything that had just happened, but Shaner had also disappeared from his memory. In this way, Gunnar will have countless opportunities to make mistakes. 3 modes, each ability is very powerful. This guy is really beyond my ability to deal with. Kotetsu Aizen looked bitter. His own abilities were insufficient, this was a foregone conclusion. The person in the video even mistook the Quincy for a good guy, which caused a big blow to her heart. Didn't I just forget about the existence of that old man? Wouldn't it be nice to meet again? The blow just now by Vice Captain Kusuka had already hit Gunnar. If we had to do it again, I believe she could still do it. Kyōraku Shunsui he stroked his bamboo hat and cheered Yongyan. Vice Captain Kotetsu, you should believe in yourself and Vice Captain Kusuka. Yeah, Kotetsu Aizen nodded fiercely. Jashiro turned to look at Kyōraku Shunsui. Kyōraku, you can't blame Vice Captain Kotetsu for this. The ability to forget existence is really outrageous. Kyōraku Shunsui nodded. He was glad in his heart. Fortunately, Gunnar's attack methods were limited. Otherwise, the consequences would be disastrous. Invisible Empire. Ha ha ha, Gunnar is still agreeing with Kotetsu Aizen's words. He is really greedy for life and death. Pepe looked straight into the distance and pretended to say casually. Kusajishi Yakiru's speed and accuracy have been improving. There is no way that Gremmy will not be vigilant, but if he plays house with 2 Shinigami like just now, it will be very disappointing. Barro waved his hand and said. Gremmy's eyes narrowed like crescent moons, but his smile was frightening. After being locked up for so long, it's hard to find an opponent. You can't let me have fun, right? Return to the video screen. But I think that person is probably an enemy. Yakiru was stunned by Kotetsu Aizen's roar. What does it probably mean? Kotetsu Aizen calmed down, but when he turned around and thought about it, he became confused again. What do you mean by rough idea? You can't just hit someone based on intuition. She is the vice captain of the 4th division, and Yakiru is the vice captain of the 11th division. They have different concepts of fighting, so there are some differences in their methods, which is very normal. That's right. You still have merit. What the tall girl said is quite sensible. Gunnar murmured to himself again. Kotetsu Aizen looked at Yakiru. If you think that something you are avoiding is the enemy, just tell me and I can refer to it. When I saw that person, I felt a sense of commotion. Yachinliu turned around and smiled. To put it bluntly, he just didn't like him. Nani, what do you mean by that? That's not a reason at all. Gunnar went crazy. Is this the reason why he was beaten? But in an instant, he understood that Yachinliu's attack behavior should be instinctive, not the so-called consciousness, but an attack based on instinct. He observed Bachinliu carefully. Indeed, if you look carefully, she looks like a little girl, but she has a fashionable hairstyle, and her expression is as wild as a mountain ape. With that, Gunnar took the lead in breaking through the defense. Damn beast, I'm going to hunt her before her wild nature is completely unleashed. Seraiti, you actually described Yakiru as a wild monkey, I'll remember you, Gunnar. Zaraki Kenpachi's face darkened and he was filled with anger. You praise Kotetsu Aizen and you praise him, but you also want to belittle Kusajishi Yakiru. You don't know how important Yakiru is to Zaraki Kenpachi, right? Madarame Makaku, Yumashika and the officers of the 11th Squadron on the side instantly had a goal, and a meaningful smile appeared on the corners of their mouths. They dare to use words to attack their team pet vice captain, they are really impatient. Ha ha ha, with Gunnar's appearance, let alone the vice captain Kusuka, even if I saw him, I couldn't help but want to punch him twice. Kyōraku Shunsui smiled heartily, this appearance really made him dirty. Eyes. He also has the wretched ability of becoming invisible, which is so disgusting. Just leave this guy to me for the future battles. I want to see what else he can do besides disgusting people. Zaraki Kenpachi's eyes flashed with murderous intent. The video continues to play. Yakiru didn't know about Gunnar's psychological activities, and turned to Kotetsu Aizen and said, this feeling of turmoil, I think it is very important. The commotion, is it a feeling similar to excitement? Kotetsu Aizen did not understand Yakiru's mood swings. Yachinliu answered while rummaging through the box, a commotion is a commotion, it's like, a little scared, excited, and very happy, something like this. If you find such a person, kill him. Yakiru slowly pulled out Zanpakuto, and his eyes became firm. Aiken once said that even though Aiken is not here now, Aiken won't mind if I kill him. Ha ha ha, I'm really laughing to death. Gremmy laughed sinisterly outside the video. With a little thing like you, how can you still kill Gunnar? Although Gunnar is not very aggressive, he doesn't think that little loli can kill Gunnar, who can become invisible and disappear. Gunnar in the video was very angry after hearing what Yakiru said. Kill you. He came behind Bachinliu and prepared for a sneak attack. What do you mean by, if I kill him? Don't get carried away, little girl. No matter whether you rely on instinct to attack me or not, it means nothing if you can't hit me. Go to hell. Yakiru realized the movement behind him and immediately slashed with Zanpakuto. The moment the blade was swung out, Gunnar disappeared using mode 2, seemingly dodging the slash. Hee, I told you that you can't hurt me. Just when he was proud, a wound suddenly appeared on his nose. Nani? Gunnar immediately covered his bleeding nose, with a look of shock on his face. It's impossible. I clearly dodged the sword just now. It's absolutely impossible to hit it. He doesn't understand why. Existence has disappeared and he will it still get hurt. That's right. Yakiru held up Zanpakuto and said with a smile, my sword, you will be hit no matter whether you dodge or not. Is this the ability of Vice Captain Kusuka? Kotetsu Aizen outside the video widened his eyes and looked at Yakiru in disbelief. Normally Shinigami have never seen Yakiru's Zanpakuto ability. I was really shocked by the ability she described. Gnarl can dodge attacks, and Vice Captain Kusaka's ability is to hit regardless of whether he dodges or not. Isn't this perfect restraint? Omaida's expression was excited. If it was a restraint level. If so, then even Kusajishi Yakiru could defeat this Quincy ranked 15th. Great, Gremmy has finally encountered a problem. Shuhei was very surprised. He was not worried about Yakiru and Kotetsu Aizen at first, but now he is probably worried about the Quincy. Invisible Empire. What the hell, how can you still have such an ability? Gunnar has already disappeared, and you can still hit him. Gremmy's pupils were shaking. This is like the strongest shield and the strongest spear. Using the strongest spear to attack the strongest shield is equivalent to using a sure hit slash to attack an enemy with the ability to dodge. It seems like a paradox, but it turns out that the 8000 styles are superior. Nyar has special abilities, why can't Kusajishi Yakiru? Pepe said gloatingly. With such a restrained relationship, Gunnar will die. After Gremmy glanced at Pepe, he put his hands on his chest and stared at the video screen. In the video, Gunnar listened to Yachinliu's confused explanation, and became even more depressed and unable to understand it at all. Yachinliu explained. My sword is a sword of imitation. In front and behind my sword, there are people who like to imitate, so the more accurate the timing, the more mistakes will occur. Okay, come out, 3-step sword beast. The next moment, 2 humanoid creatures appeared behind Yachinliu. The former is a long-faced skeleton with hair, long bony horns on its forehead and chin, wearing black fur, and holding a short halberd. The latter is a monster covered in fur, short and fat, holding a kitchen knife, and only its eyes can be seen. The two creatures created after Zanpakuto Shikai look very strange. Gunner panicked instantly, sweating profusely, and faltered tremblingly. Then, what is that? Aha! Yakiru took two Shikai creatures with him and swung a three-body sword. 2. Hey hey. After the chop, the three of them danced a silly dance. However, Kusajishi Yakiru unleashes her hidden power, keeping Kotetsu Aizen in place. As this, the Shikai of Vice Captain Kusuka. Kotetsu Aizen outside the video gulped, completely unbelievable. It's not like Captain Unohana's blade turned into a living thing, nor is it like Captain Hitsugaya's appearance of a material creature visible to the naked eye. Kyōraku Shunsui frowned slightly and observed carefully. The video's eyes fell on Bachinryu. Rangaku was equally shocked. The blade has not changed, nor has it become the embodiment of Zanpakuto's true form after being tempered by Bankai. How can there be such a Shikai? Vice Captain Kusaka, you're hiding so deep. Omaeda scratched his head, thinking that his ability would be a sure hit with his slashes, but it turned out to be a humanoid creature created by Shikai. Caused by the attack. There is also this Shikai mode, which has not appeared in Shinigami yet. Kusajishi Yakiru smiled innocently. Low-key, low-key. Back to the picture. Gunner, who had a slash on his face, covered the wound and kept screaming. I was going to split you in two. Yachinryu was curious that Gernar's body was so hard. I specifically explained my ability, and you came to kill me. Do you think I can't avoid it? My eliminating sliding body doesn't make me disappear, it just slides back slightly. By concentrating all the Reiatsu and evading the enemy at a speed that exceeds all reaction speeds, you can. Before he finished speaking, half of Gunner's body was cut off at the shoulder. He was instantly confused. You're lying, right? At this time, a blonde boy appeared quietly, sitting on the hospital bed, looking at the three of them with a strange look. Chapter 159. The Brain of the Spirit King. No, the strongest member of the Knights. Seraiti. Who is that little boy? His sudden appearance scares people to death. Rangaku patted his chest and took a deep breath. Although the blonde boy's appearance is more pleasing to the eye than Gunner, his inexplicable appearance is really scary. Wearing the clothes of a member of the Knights of the Star Cross, this boy should be the real Gremmy Thoumeaux, right? Tōshirō frowned. The boy was wearing the same clothes as Gernar, so he was undoubtedly a member of the Knights of the Star Cross, but his true identity was still open to question. It seemed that the wounds on Gunner's body were also caused by the boy, but what kind of power could cut off the body in an instant without any warning? Nyar may have been a subordinate of Gremmy Thoumeaux, like a subordinate officer of Arankar. Sui Feng guessed that because his subordinate was useless, he killed him. This also fits the character of the Quincy. What a cruel race. Kashiwamura Sajin was filled with indignation. Although they were all enemies, he couldn't stand this kind of behavior. It would be nice to be more cruel. With one less enemy, won't Vice Captain Joe and Vice Captain Kotetsu lighten some of their burdens? Kurotsuchi Mayuri smiled coldly. Visored. Don't do it. This boy Quincy, I hope you are kind. Mugaruma Kensai and Odoribashi Rojiro were both nervous and their mouths were dry. Sitting next to two wounded people, come and be unkind. Don't do anything to them. Why are you two panicking? Aren't there two Shinigami here? Hiyori looked at the two of them with some disdain. Are you so afraid of death? Return to the video screen. Seeing the Quincy appearing out of thin air, Kotetsu Aizen held his breath and cold sweat flowed down his face, fearing that the sweat falling to the ground would make a sound. Compared to Kotetsu Aizen, Yakiru was much calmer, but his eyes were still fixed on the boy. When did he enter the barrier? What method did he use? Kotetsu Aizen didn't understand. In order to prevent the Quincy from entering, she specially set up a protective barrier, but why did the boy come in quietly and show up on the hospital bed? Could it be that he has the ability to become invisible just like Gunner? Impossible. Am I going to die? I fought very hard, right? Gunner was bleeding all over his body, and his whole face was distorted. Well, very hard, as the product of my fantasy. Gremmy looked at Gnarl and smiled slightly. Although it was a very gentle smile, he didn't feel any warmth at all. He felt like there was a sharp knife hidden in the smile. The product of a fantasy. Kotetsu Aizen's mind has gone blank and he can't turn around at all. What does the product of fantasy mean? At this time, Gunner still wanted to struggle, and looked at Gremmy with pleading eyes. Wait a minute, I can still fight. With my ability, it is more than enough to deal with such a small character. Well, your ability is indeed amazing. Gunner's ability is to make his own existence disappear from visual consciousness and memory, right? Gremmy said in a deep voice. So, please also remove it from my memory. Disappear. The abandoned son, Gurnal, went crazy. He roared Gremmy angrily, and then rushed forward with the Reiko lightsaber. I'm sorry, I don't know who you are, your future is unimaginable. Gremmy narrowed his eyes, and the next moment there was an explosion sound. Gunner exploded like a bomb, and his plasma shot out in all directions. Seraiti. There's a difference between what he looks like and what he looks like. This seemingly gentle blonde boy is actually such a cruel person. Kai couldn't help but swallowed. The bloody scene in the video made her feel very uncomfortable. According to Gunner's words, everyone also knew that the boy was Gremmy. The product of fantasy is exactly what Captain Hitsugaya originally guessed. This guy can create weapons through imagination. Kyōraku Shunsui's eyes narrowed and he lowered his voice. I just didn't expect that he could actually create living things. I originally thought that the various knives created or the spirit attack would be powerful enough. But the result is far more exaggerated than this. I can also understand Gremmy. Gurnar is the product of an illusion. Even if he is killed, he can create countless similar people. A bright light flashed in Kurotsuchi Mayuri's golden eyes. This is much more convenient than his eye plan. Creatures can be created through illusions, and different characters created have absolutely different abilities. Kurotsuchi Mayuri just admires this ability, but does not think that Gremmy's illusion ability is greater than his own eye plan. As expected, they are all weirdos and have almost the same ideas. Kashiwamura Sajin raised the corner of his mouth, glanced at Kurotsuchi Mayuri with disdain and said. Yes, although Gurnal is an enemy, he is also a living life. As a companion, Gremmy would not cherish his life so much. It is really hard to understand. Hinamori Momo sighed, unable to understand what Kurotsuchi Mayuri said. Kurotsuchi Mayuri snorted. There are still many things you don't understand. Invisible Empire. Gremmy, you are so cruel. Bambietta looked at Gremmy with a smile on her lips, but I like it. Those who are useless are kept as decorations. It's so bloody. Amen. Pepe raised his wooden stick high and prayed to the sky. The video screen continues to play. After Gunner's body exploded, blood splattered onto Kotetsu Aizen's face. She didn't care about anything else. She glanced at Muguruma Kensai and Rojiro lying on the bed, and said in a panic, Who are you? Please get out of there. Of course she didn't know that Shaner was killed by a teenager. Are you worried about the captain here? Gremmy smiled with a knife hidden in his face, directly piercing Kotetsu Aizen's heart. Hurry up. Seeing Gremmy's indifference, Kotetsu Aizen roared directly. You do not have to worry about. Gremmy got up from the hospital bed, put his hands in the pockets of his coat, and said briskly, I have killed them. Hearing this, Kotetsu Aizen immediately ran to the hospital bed and reached out to check the pulses of Kensai and Lu Shenglang. The result shocked his heart, and their pulses indeed stopped beating. The most intuitive explanation is death. Wow. Gremmy seemed to have done something inconspicuous, and even laughed at the panicked Kotetsu Aizen. Just when he turned around, Bachinliu came with his sword. Gremmy successfully dodges an attack of this magnitude with just a sideways movement. Don't be ridiculous. If you are completely exposed in front of me like you are, of course you can escape. Gremmy smiled at Yachinliu. Yakiru didn't take it seriously and swung his sword to strike again, but Gremmy stretched out a hand, grasped the former's arm holding the sword, and twisted it violently. Crack. There was a sharp and clear sound of bone friction. Imagine, if the bones of your arm were biscuits, you would think, it's broken, now. Gremmy narrowed his eyes. And you would still think like this, if the bones of your arm were broken, are all the other bones broken too? Sure enough, Yakiru's other arm was also twisted and deformed. She was completely confused and didn't know what happened. Why did the damage spread? In this world, the most powerful power is imagination. Gremmy's eyes darkened. And everything I imagine, will become reality. Seraiti. The most worrying thing has happened. Kyōraku Shunsui lowered the bamboo hat, and his worried eyes were hidden under the bamboo hat, making it difficult to detect. Gremmy imagined a life form with special abilities, which is acceptable. But if you can realize whatever you want, then there is no solution. The arm was broken for no apparent reason, but before the fracture, Gremmy touched the arm of the deputy captain Kusuka. Is this a trigger condition of imagination, and the enemy must be touched? Shu Bing raised suspicion. It's better to be like Hisagi said. It would be better if there are trigger conditions, otherwise no one will be his opponent. Kashiwamura Sajin looked at Shuhei and agreed with him. Zaraki Kenpachi's brows twisted together, his eyes filled with anger. Imagine Yakiru's fracture, and she has a fracture. Then I imagine that Gremmy guy dies. Visored. Nani, we are already dead. When did that Quincy take action? Muguruma Kensai twitched the corner of his mouth, and he was just gone. Hiyori became happy when she heard this. Oh my, it's so miserable. Kensai, Ross, please come and don't fall into hell. Rojiro glanced at Hiyori, and then his eyes lit up. That's not right. When we were taking stock of Jashiro, didn't we play scenes from the next few decades? Abarai Renji's daughter at that time, Abarai Berry Blossom, was just eavesdropping. Quanshi's dialogue. This means that future Muguruma Kensai is not dead. Muguruma Kensai lying on the bed in the picture will not die either. Yes, 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 if you don't tell me, I really ignored this, I'm not dead, haha. Muguruma Kensai laughed instantly, he walked to Rojiro, patted his shoulder, and gloated. He said, I haven't seen you in the future before. Maybe the grass on your grave will be 3 meters high by then. Lujiro shook his shoulders, broke away from Fist, and rolled his eyes at him. Shut up. Return to the video screen. Just when Kusajishi Yakiru was shocked. A wall in the room was suddenly pushed open by an inexplicable force, and rubble splattered. I sensed that Reiatsu Kusuka was quite unsettled, so I came here to find him. Zaraki Kenpachi held Nozarashi on his shoulders and stood at the entrance of the cave, staring at Gremmy with ferocious eyes. What? It turns out it's just a kid causing trouble here. Aiken. Yakiru looked at Kenpachi curiously. He didn't expect Kenpachi to come out of Mugen so quickly. After Katetsu Aizen saw Kenpachi, he immediately asked, Captain Zaraki, may I ask? Captain Unohana, how is she? She's dead, Kenpachi said decisively. Hearing this, Katetsu Aizen's eyes lost their luster and his head slowly lowered. Yes, really. I was the one who killed him. If you hate me and want to kill me, then go ahead. I don't care. Great, if Captain Zaraki kills the captain, it means that you have inherited the title of Captain Unohana. Katetsu Aizen shed tears, and the letter Unohana Retsu left for her also explained her original intention. Although it was difficult to accept, she understood. Well, that's right. Kenpachi didn't look back, as if it was difficult to face Yongyan. Seraiti. Fortunately, Captain Zaraki arrived, otherwise the consequences would be disastrous. Toshirō breathed a sigh of relief. Kusajishi Yakiru has lost the ability to fight, and Katetsu Aizen is a medic, and his defeat is certain. But Zaraki Kenpachi came and the situation completely changed. Yongyan, thank you very much for understanding me. Unohana Retsu smiled gently at Katetsu Aizen. It seems that before fighting Kenpachi, he informed Katetsu Aizen of something through some means. No. Katetsu Aizen turned her head. I respect the captain's choice and decision very much, and she looked at Zaraki Kenpachi. I hope Captain Zaraki can protect Deputy Kusuka. Captain, kill Gremmy. Zaraki Kenpachi grinned and snorted. Do you even need to say this? He beat Yachinryu so badly that he wanted to pluck out Gremmy's skin. Invisible Empire. Oops, that's bad. Zaraki Kenpachi is here. Gremmy, you are so miserable. Pepe said in a weird voice. Shout, so what if Zaraki Kenpachi is here? Isn't he just a reckless man? Gremmy didn't take Zaraki Kenpachi seriously at all. In front of my imagination, he can't do anything. Gerald nodded. I hope so. I'm very optimistic about you, Gremmy. Zaraki Kenpachi split him in half, and he still remembered it. Although he didn't like Gremmy either, he still supported the latter more than Zaraki Kenpachi. Return to the video screen. Oh, are you Zaraki Kenpachi? Kenpachi comes from Zaraki, so is it called Zaraki Kenpachi? Gremmy's voice was very soft, but the words he spoke were harsh. It seems very strong, just like what I imagined. Suddenly, the ground began to shake. The ground where Zaraki Kenpachi and the three of them were stood began to rise rapidly. In an instant, a huge building rose from the ground, and the sudden change caused Muguruma Kensai and Rojiro to fall down. Danger. Katetsu Aizen didn't care about anything else and immediately jumped down to catch them. Okay, the stage has been prepared. After all, it is the famous Zaraki Kenpachi. Wouldn't it be rude not to prepare a gorgeous stage? Gremmy intervened with both hands. Kabuto, squinting and sneering. What is this? Something like magic. Zaraki Kenpachi didn't understand the other party's ability. It's neither magic nor illusion, it's reality. I can turn dreams into reality, the visionary, Gremmy Thoumeaux. You should feel honored to be able to fight with me, because the strongest person in the Star-Crossed Knights is me. Invisible Empire. Gremmy, you are too arrogant. You are the strongest person in the Knights of the Star-Cross. Did you put us on the spot? Gerald spread his hands. Although Gremmy is also very capable, the brain of his body is not the brain of the Soul King, so he does not have the power of the Soul King. How can it be compared with myself, the Spirit King's heart? Yaskin snickered on the sidelines and didn't say much. According to Gremmy's ability, it is very easy to become a member of the guards. However, this guy's thoughts are too extreme and he is very pervert, so he has been imprisoned in prison. Let alone being a member of the guards, under normal circumstances it would be difficult to regain freedom. That's the fact. You don't need to quibble. No matter what others think, Gremmy thinks he is number one, so he is number one. The video screen continues to play. I am Knights of the Star Cross v. Gremmy Thoumeaux, you must be careful. When Gremmy introduced himself, he squinted his eyes and completely ignored Zaraki Kenpachi. Yeah, Kenpachi didn't care who he was, he picked up Nozarashi and slashed him. This blow seemed to hit Gremmy's shoulder, but in fact it didn't even cut through the opponent's clothes. I'll say it again, I can turn dreams into reality. The most powerful power in this world is imagination. As you see now, I just imagined that my body is far stronger than steel. Gremmy explained. But as soon as he finished speaking, Nozarashi, who was on his shoulder, continued to chop down, causing his shoulder to crack instantly. What? If your body is as hard as steel, then I will tell you, from the very beginning I will kill you with the strength that can cut through steel. Zaraki Kenpachi stared angrily, like an evil ghost crawling out of hell. Gremmy fell to his knees after being chopped down, his expression a little solemn. What's that expression on your face? Are you imagining that you can't be cut off? Kenpachi was very disdainful. Let me declare first, with your little imagination, you want to imagine that I can't be cut off. It's impossible to cut off something. Because I am. a Kenpachi who has inherited a unique heritage that cannot be tainted by anyone. Chapter 160, Brainstorming, Kurotsuchi Mayuri can't put it down for the Quincy. Captain Zaraki is so handsome. Shu Bing outside the video praised him openly. Kenpachi is unique and cannot be tarnished by anyone. This sentence is so powerful when spoken. HMPH, that little guy still wants to fight me. He's so unreasonable. Zaraki Kenpachi looked at what he said in the video and felt a little embarrassed. It was a bit hypocritical. Hana Retsu looked at Zaraki Kenpachi with a secret smile on his face. Her sacrifice was not in vain, you can feel it from Zaraki Kenpachi's words. Isn't that high arena the result of Gremmy's imagination? Tōshirō changed the subject and stared at the rectangular stone pillar in the picture that was nearly 100 meters tall. Even among the buildings in the real-world city, it is the most eye-catching presence. Captain, his imagination can become a reality, which means that the stone pillar is real, but I didn't expect that he could create such a large-scale entity. Rangaku's beautiful eyes were startled, and he looked at Zaraki Kenpachi in surprise, and continued. Gremmy imagined that his body was harder than steel, but he didn't expect that Captain Zaraki's strength is more than enough to cut through steel. Even if his imagination is very powerful, he can still deal with it. Quote. Omaeda nodded, but not everyone has the power of Captain Zaraki. I guess it won't work if it's Deputy Captain Kusaka. Didn't you see that Captain Zaraki hasn't taken off his blindfold yet? Kashiwamura Sajin interrupted Omaeda. The fact that he didn't take off his blindfold shows that Zaraki Kenpachi's current strength is still weak. He is a powerful Shinigami, and Kashiwamura Sajin can definitely cut Gremmy down. There are indeed some bugs in the imagination, but the user seems to be a little not very smart. Kurotsuchi Mayuri shook his head and waved his hands, with a look of disappointment towards Gremmy. There must be something wrong with this guy's brain, why did he imagine his body is harder than steel? No, Captain Nirvana and Captain Zaraki have already chopped them down with a knife. If Gremmy doesn't think of his body as hard as steel, how can he imagine that his body is as hard as wood? Cut off the warmth. Omaeda frowned, a little confused. Steel is the hardest thing known today, right? Is it wrong to think of yourself as steel? It's just that Zaraki Kenpachi's power is too powerful. No, Kurotsuchi Mayuri shook her head. Just imagine that your body is so hard that you won't be cut by Captain Zaraki. Wouldn't it be a perfect solution? As soon as these words came out, Omaeda, Shubing and others scratched their heads and thought, feeling like their brains were about to grow. Yes, if Gremmy directly imagined that he would not be cut by Captain Zaraki because of his hardness, he would be invincible. Hira suddenly realized, did he not expect that Captain Zaraki's power would be so great, or he couldn't do this? Something. It shouldn't be impossible. He can use his imagination to visualize huge stone pillars and even life forms. There is nothing he can't do. Sui Feng also felt that Gremmy's brain was not working well. Invisible Empire. Gremmy, you should have known at that time that Zaraki Kenpachi was not an easy guy to deal with. How could he be so fragile as you thought? If I were you, I would be embarrassed to call myself a dreamer again. Pepe looked at Gremmy arrogantly and said with mockery. It's really too simplistic. You have to know that your opponent is Zaraki Kenpachi, not an ordinary Shinigami. Rijabalo also glanced at Gremmy. Don't waste such a powerful ability. As a dreamer, do I still need your guidance to imagine? Gremmy's slightly narrowed eyelids relaxed and his face darkened a lot. He was very resistant to others saying that the things he imagined were bad. But it's not important. An attack of this magnitude by Zaraki Kenpachi cannot harm Gremmy at all. His next imagination, Zaraki Kenpachi may not be able to withstand it. A Senate said. The video continues to play. Then, what is that? Something like a stone fortress suddenly rose from the ground. What happened? Hey, don't make any noise, I don't know either, this Reiatsu. This Reiatsu is Captain Zaraki. The Shinigami in the distance immediately became excited after confirming this information. Suddenly, a person noticed something was wrong. If Captain Zaraki is fighting on the boulder, it means that he was there before the boulder rose, but why didn't we feel the larger Captain's Reiatsu before? When did Zaraki Kenpachi become able to control his own Reiatsu? The Shinigami couldn't explain it, but they still caroused. We can win this battle. If Captain Zaraki is here, we will definitely win. Those guys down there are really noisy. Zaraki Kenpachi glanced at the Shinigami below from the corner of his eye and complained. Isn't this great? They think that if you come, they will definitely win this battle. That kind of imagination is free, right? Gremmy didn't care. He squatted on the ground and the wound on his shoulder had recovered as before. This look surprised Zaraki Kenpachi. You actually healed your injury in front of me. Who knows, maybe you say you can cure it, and then it actually gets cured. Gremmy explained vaguely. I just imagined myself that has healed where I was cut. After listening, Zaraki Kenpachi froze on the spot, a little confused. Gremmy seemed to have guessed Zaraki Kenpachi's reaction and continued. You must think so about the ability to be like a game, right? People like you can't understand my abilities until they are defeated by me, so. Come on, Zaraki Kenpachi, I won't say, I'll use just one finger to deal with you, such boring words. And I can kill you without even using a finger, just my brain. Saraiti. Seeing Gremmy's arrogant look in the video, Zaraki Kenpachi snorted. I thought that Gremmy was not like an ordinary enemy, an enemy. I won't say, I'll use just one finger to deal with you. What's the result? There is another sentence at the end, you don't even need to use a finger, you can kill you with your brain, you should raise it first and then suppress it, right? Ha ha ha, this guy Gremmy is really arrogant, and it's different from ordinary arrogance. Kyōraku Shunsui smiled slightly, he always does unexpected things. Can this guy treat his injuries just by imagining a complete version of himself? Unohana Retsu frowned slightly, feeling incredible. Kaido, which she specializes in, has very limited healing abilities. Being able to treat injuries through imagination seems to be much more advanced than the healing techniques she has mastered. Captain, he can only heal himself, right? Katetsu Aizen looked at Unohana Retsu with a frown. If this is the case, where is Unohana Retsu's face? No, if you can imagine yourself as a complete person, you can also imagine other people as a complete person. Kurotsuchi Mayuri shook his head and smiled, if you regard him as a medic, he is definitely a talent. He immediately took a keen interest in Gremmy. Of course, I don't want Gremmy to become a medic for the Technology Development Bureau. Besides, the Development Bureau has no need for medics. What he wants to own is Gremmy's brain. Since something can be realized through imagination, if it is used for technical development, it is definitely a rare talent in 10,000 years. Just like the Mian plan, to realize artificial Shinigami, with Gremmy's imagination, many problems can be avoided. However, the Shinigami plan that Kurotsuchi Mayuri has pursued throughout her life has now changed its purpose, from the original artificial Shinigami plan to a real plan to raise a daughter. But technology development is not limited to Project Mian. For example, before the Quincy absorbed Bankai and used it for his own use, he could use his imagination to imagine something similar to the function of the shadow invading potion and take back Bankai without even needing any information. Imagination is endless. With this ability, no matter what responsibility you are engaged in, you are definitely a talent. However, there are too many uncontrollable factors in this ability. Jashiro frowned. This is probably why Gremmy is loyal to Yuhabach. Return to the video screen. Bang. There was a sudden loud noise behind Gremmy, and the bubbling lava rose with billowing smoke. What do you think it is? He asked Zaraki Kenpachi. You can tell at a glance. Then where do you think it came from? I don't care where you came from. Of course from my head. This was the first time for Zaraki Kenpachi to encounter this inexplicable ability, but he didn't hate it and was even extremely excited. Facing the lava that seemed to be coming from the waves, he swung Nozarashi violently. The Reiatsu attached to Nozarashi directly blocks the lava. But Yachinryu on the side was stunned. Why are you still sitting there? Come up quickly. Kenpachi yelled at Yakiru, telling him to get out of there quickly. Don't force yourself to make things difficult for others. Gremmy told him. Under the influence of my ability, all the bones in that girl's body were brittle. What does it mean? Kenpachi was confused. What? Don't you know, like the shortbread, just don't touch it. Are they crispy cookies? Are they fragile like snacks? Then why didn't you tell me earlier? You are such a long-winded guy. Zaraki Kenpachi felt angry, jumped up, and slashed with his sword. Faced with Kenpachi's full blow, Gremmy didn't even move. The next second, it was like Kyōraku Shunsui Bankai's third section of Danubuchi. Kenpachi looked around as if he was drowning, and he was indeed stretched out of the water. What's even scarier than the Duanyuan is that only Zaraki Kenpachi is in the cube water tank, and Gremmy is not affected. How can you fight this? Madarame Makaku's mouth twitched outside the video. First came the lava, and then came the waves. The two layers of ice and fire left Zaraki Kenpachi completely unable to fight back. The lava that came directly at him was okay, Kenpachi was able to bounce it away with Nozarashi, but the drowning state completely affected his physiology. The water wave that appears out of thin air is very similar to Kyōraku leader's Bankai, but it doesn't seem to affect itself. Sui Feng looked at Kyōraku Shunsui and said. Please give me flowers. Yeah, it's more advanced than my Yuanyuan's ability, and, this may just be the tip of the iceberg of Gremmy's ability. Kyōraku Shunsui sighed. His own fish-breaking abyss is one of Bankai's 4 abilities, but Gremmy can imagine that there are definitely thousands of similar abilities. No wonder Gremmy's draw data panel is not as high as his own, but it is ranked in front of him. It's very clear now. It's lava and it's waves. It's impossible for ordinary people to have these two opposing abilities at the same time. What a monster. Omeda frowned, feeling worried. HMPH, it's just a little trick, what's the big deal? Zaraki Kenpachi was very disdainful. The more this guy with strange abilities, the more he hoped. Become its opponent. Zai Palace. Invincible, I really can't imagine how you can lose with this kind of ability. Yami saw Zaraki Kenpachi being hammered, not to mention how happy she was. Zaraki Kenpachi, just admit defeat this time. There is really no solution. No matter how powerful Zaraki Kenpachi's Reiatsu is, he can't defeat his unbridled imagination. Grimjow marveled. The video continues to play. Trapped in the water, Zaraki Kenpachi struggled, but found that it was useless. You haven't figured out the situation yet. The air you jumped into has already turned into water. Gremmy stood in the distance, smiling. However, the next moment, a crack opened in the middle of the boulder stage, and then the water covering Zaraki Kenpachi fell from the sky and accurately fell into the crack. Needless to say, this is also something that Gremmy imagined through brainstorming. In the water, if you delay your judgment in an instant, you will fall into the crack prepared for you in this state. 0. This is exactly the plan Gremmy imagined. The cracked stage closed instantly, and the collision produced a deafening sound. I don't think you'd get caught in a crack in the ground, Zaraki Kenpachi, but what about being constantly surrounded by water? If Fuji Mountain can't hold you down, then what about the Undersea Dragon Palace? If you can't even breathe, you will die sooner or later. You will be wrapped in water and fall into the cracks in the ground, and slowly die. No matter what kind of monster you are, 1 hour is enough. In his imagination, these two things could exist for much longer than an hour. Bang. Before he could finish imagining the scene of Kenpachi's death, he heard a loud bang. Just like the 5 elements mountain being stripped of the 6-character mantra, the stage exploded instantly, producing countless rocks that shot out around. Gremmy was a little shocked. The next second, Zaraki Kenpachi rushed up like a water ghost, holding the 8,000 stream that was about to fall from the stone. Yakiru didn't change even though I was holding her. It seems that her bones have returned to their original shape. Kenpachi grinned. Put all your energy into fighting me. You have more energy to control Yachinryu, right? Invisible Empire. What the hell, can you break through the stage even though you're covered in water? Gremmy found it incredible. What kind of monster is this? Gremmy, your mistake is that you underestimated Zaraki Kenpachi. Don't you know that guy is the one who was given special combat power by His Majesty? Mask Killer Bersi looked at Gray. M.I. said. Masko scratched his head and smiled. As long as Reiatsu is strong enough, a stage made of stone will not be able to trap him at all. Gremmy, you should make a steel stage, maybe you can suppress him. That beast. Gremmy glanced at him. Why don't you go fight him? The video continues to play. Zaraki Kenpachi slashed head-on, and Gremmy imagined a stone pillar to block the attack. Gremmy could no longer care about his gentlemanly demeanor and hurriedly dodged. Half of the huge stage was destroyed in an instant. The fierce battle between the two was clearly seen by Yasuke in the distance with a telescope. What's going on? It's so spectacular. To be able to fight Gremmy head-on, this guy is indeed worthy of the title Zaraki Kenpachi. Yasuke sat on the stone seat, eating snacks while admiring openly. Although he was praising Zaraki Kenpachi, Yasuke was not optimistic about him. Instead, he was curious about whether Habach would send Gremmy as a pervert. But speaking of which, His Majesty doesn't know where he went. However, Peep's voice suddenly came from behind him. That's right, that monster would be fine if he stayed in a prison all his life, he. Hearing this, Yasuke glanced at Pepe out of the corner of his eye and said coldly, if you ask me, you can be considered a monster. Let's each other. Pepe showed a disgusted expression. Yasuke couldn't stand him and turned around to leave. Pepe quickly asked, where are you going? I'm going to leave for a while. You should understand that if you are still here in a daze, you might be affected by his joke-like changes. Indeed, this distance is indeed not a safe zone. Really, in the face of the world, people who can only dream and do nothing else have no right to laugh at them. Yasuke sighed. Seeing those people who can do anything just by dreaming. People who don't do anything think that those who can't do anything are really peaceful.